Bruce. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Camden Select Board meeting for October 22nd, 2019. We're going to go right into our agenda and ask our first item, as usual, if we have anybody from the public who would like to speak to an item that's not on the agenda. And since Mark is walking up, I assume you do.
Yes.
Make sure your mic is on, please, Mark.
It is on. Yes, my name is Mark Haskell. I lived in Camden for the better part of the last 40 years. I'm currently serving on the Parks and Rec Committee, the Charter Commission, and the Budget Committee. Okay, so I'm kind of familiar with some of the stuff that goes on in town. And I'd like to make a little statement, and this is basically my opinion and my thoughts, but
Understood.
I want you to be aware of it. Recently, I received my property tax bill from the town. It went up approximately 23% from the previous year. I spoke with the tax assessor, and I understand why and how the system works. This is not really my concern. My issues are how the town spends, or more specifically, how the town gives away taxpayer money. There are at least 4 different organizations that are made up mostly of non-Camden residents that use town property and town facilities for free. I am not against any of these organizations. I actually support and approve of what they do, and I'm glad that they choose our town for their recreation and to do business. I just don't believe the Camden taxpayer should be footing the bill. The Camden Adult Softball League has used the snowball fields and the school fields for decades. The five-town football has been there for a number of years as well. Neither pays anything to help maintain the fields. Yes, I know there is some volunteering to work on the fields, but there's no actually fee involved to support the town. Many of the softball teams are made up almost completely of non-Camden residents. The five-town football includes 4 other towns. For the next year, 2020, the Parks and Rec Committee and the Snowball staff will be recommending a booking fee to be charged for these 2 groups. With over 5 months of use, this fee does not cover the cost of mowing the grass, let alone cover costs to maintain. The town pays approximately $2,000 every other year to redo just the infield, not to mention many thousands for aeration and other work that needs to be done. There's also substantial staff time involved in managing those as well. The rowing club uses 2 acres of prime lakefront property with full access to Barrett's Cove parking. They came to the Park and Rec meeting a while ago, and I asked how many members were Camden residents, and was told that less than half of their members were Camden residents. They have an agreement with the town to use the property for free. How many actual lakefront property owners would like to have their property with no tax property, no property tax on it? Okay? The Camden Farmers Market. The vast majority are businesses that come to Camden to sell their goods with the intent of making a profit. The vast majority are not Camden residents. They pay nothing for the use of town property. As a former businessman in this town, I think this is a slap in the face to every business in this town. Like I said earlier, I support all of these. I'm just against the town taxpayer picking up the bill for all of this. These are not the only things that this town gives away, but this is the start of my protest. With having said that, I am going to withhold 10% of my tax bill in protest. I would like to inform the town of Camden that they have officially run out of my money to give away. thank you for listening to me.
Thank you,
Here
Mark.
is my tax bill, and I'll give it to the town clerk.
I don't
Thank you very much.
Can you please bring it
I
to
can bring it
the,
to the town office.
yes, that would
Have
be
to
much
do that, Mark.
appreciated.
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Allison.
Are you going to submit that to the paper too? Sometimes I wonder how many people, it was very well written and well thought out, and I appreciate your comments, as I think we all do.
I have a copy of the letter that I will give to whoever wants it.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Is there anybody else from the public that wants to speak to a non-agenda item? Not seeing any hands. I will, before we go on to the next agenda items, I should, just in the unlikely event there's anybody here waiting for an agenda item, there's one agenda item that's going to be tabled because we don't have a full quorum tonight. And that is item 9, which is discussion on the Camden Fire Department becoming a licensed fire responder agency. That will be tabled, and with the select board's approval, we'll probably put it on the agenda on November 6th, next select board meeting. So just in case, I wanted to make that comment before we go on to select board reports. Item 2. Jenna?
I'm going to skip it for right now.
Good idea. Mark?
A couple things. Again, as always, there are great shows at the Opera House. Please look at the Opera House calendar and look and see what's coming up. There is a Friday night. I'm not sure about the date. I don't have the dates in front of me, but there's a great guitar player playing at the Blue Cafe on Friday night. It's I don't know if it's this. I think it's a week away, but terrific stuff. And there are always good things happening. Please visit the calendar for the Opera House because it's been an exceptional year. And great things to see. I've been in a couple different meetings this week. One of them was the CDAC meeting, Community Economic Development Advisory Committee, and Jeremy's here. And one of the things that came out of that I thought was real interesting was, and Jeremy maybe can expound on it, is they will be doing some, the EPA will be doing some more examination of the riverbank, or doing the first examination of the riverbank. And some, is that my phone? Hold
Not
on,
you.
excuse me. Not me?
Not you.
Okay. And they will be doing more than the usual just core samples. They'll be doing actually trenches to really examine the property really closely. And as part of that, they will also be doing some more sampling for new chemicals that they're now looking for in the rest of the possible contaminated area as well, which may change the whole process there. So Jeremy, you may want to, because I thought it was a really interesting update.
Sure. So, as you know, EPA has decided to spend some targeted funds, assessment funds, and it's been through the contract process. They've have a work plan in place with their contractor, and we are hoping that November 18th, that I think it's a Monday, that they'll be here to start sampling. Should take no more than a few days, and like Mark said, they'll be doing not just core samples and pore water samples, they'll also be doing trench excavations.
What date was that again, Jeremy?
November 18th, hopefully.
November 18th.
Thank you.
I think that's the right Monday. And they'll be doing likely 4 trench excavations coming from the bank where we know the material is. And they'll, the trench excavations are generally the width of an excavator bucket. This is a small piece of equipment, not a large excavator. And likely go down 5 feet and then going back away from the bank up to 15 feet, and if needed, even further, depending on what we see. So that's a good thing. And as Mark said, the state wanted to have EPA look at and us look at the PFAS and PFAS is the forever chemicals that are in like Teflon and fire retardants. So they're going to be looking at those. The state wanted to kind of manage that process, and the feds said, no, we're going to do it. So EPA will just handle it with the contractor, and our contractor or environmental consultant, Brian Slacky, will be up here making sure they're doing exactly what we want them to do and where we want them to do that.
Thanks for the update, Jeremy.
Yep.
Very good. Mark,
And I may add, again, kudos to Allison, because it was her insistence that the riverbank get tested that is bringing this all to happen, which is, I think, is really important that we take care of the town.
And really
Jeremy,
quick,
really, for finally, for listening to the crazy lady that just keeps dragging everybody down to the riverbank and giving me a, yes. No, you went pretty willingly.
yeah,
I
you're
lost
right.
a
I didn't
pair- I
get
lost a
dragged
pair of
down the
shoes.
bank, but, oh, what was I going to say? I'm
All
sorry.
right, you'll come back to you. Mark, you got anything else?
Yes, I was also at an Energy and Sustainability Committee meeting yesterday. Some interesting things going on there. One thing that the committee would like to do, if they can help with any of the work involving the Streetlight Project. They would like to be involved. If we can take any of the workload off of town officials or anything, they volunteered to help in that. So I thought I'd mention that to Audra, so if there's anything they can do. They also had a guest speaker yesterday at the meeting, Rosanna Patain from York, Maine, who is in the Energy Steering Committee for there, and talked about what they've done. And there's some interesting things there. She also has a project she's working on regarding housing. It's something I'll talk to Jeremy about later on, some good ideas. But one of the things that she mentioned that I thought was interesting is they were able to get Vista volunteers. We've looked for interns every year to work on some of our projects, and they were actually, for $6,500, able to hire a Vista person, that's sort of the USA version of the Peace Corps, for an entire year to do additional work. So, as long as the work includes needs for low-income people, then that's a pretty easy program to get involved in. So something we may want to look into to get more help.
Thank you, Mark.
That's it.
Allison, you.
Okay, so, this one. Okay, so this last week, Jenna and I attended the Library Board of Trustees meeting. That was the first meeting I had attended, and it was interesting. They're coming right along in their fundraising, and we learned all kinds of things. They've also hired a new, is it communications or?
She's like events and communication, definitely events,
Diane?
programming.
No, Julia
Oh,
is it Pierce? Anyway, she's giving a talk tonight, actually, on, she was not a contestant, but a participant in this show, 1628, which was a simulation of settlers that came to New England in 1628, and they kind of recreated it, and she was on this reality TV show, so she's really interesting, and it's a fun show, but she's the new person there doing something, and it was great. It was like meeting a TV star, kind of, because I had just been watching her. So the main reason that I attended this time was trying to give an update to the Library Board of Trustees on the grant that we have through the Maine Coastal Program to try to merge some of the findings of the Montgomery Dam feasibility study with the problems that we know we have with the seawall. And so that was great. I think it was certainly helpful to me, and hopefully brought them up to speed a little bit. As many of you know, the Library Board of Trustees controls Harbor Park. The town of Camden, the town select board, looks over the Montgomery Dam, being a portion of town-owned property. The seawall is kind of like rides that line right in between, and whoever takes care of it kind of switches back and forth depending on various things. But technically, the Library Board of Trustees has full control over Harbor Park. So we really need to work together. Any change to the seawall, even just the status quo, any of that here requires us working together. So I think a lot of people have gotten the impression that everything we're doing is just all about fish passage and just trying to get fish up to the lake. But the reason for dealing with Montgomery Dam right now, and the reason it's definitely appropriate to look at it apart from the rest of them a little bit, is because of not fish issues so much as resiliency. If you take If you look at it just completely, never mind the fish, we don't care about fish, we don't care where they go or what they do, what would be the right thing to do with the seawall and that dam, and just looking at that in terms of climate change. So we went over just the basics, of how often does this happen? It's not as infrequent as everybody thinks. This is a little bit more than the it's an 11.9 foot high tide that will overtop this lower part here. That's the area that was all filled in back in the 30s. So every time the tide gets to 11.9 feet, it makes it so your feet get wet right there. The next time that's going to happen is October 28th, actually. So if you get in the habit of going down there and just go on and look at the tide chart and see when the high tide is going to be, it's really striking to sit there and look at it. And I think a lot of the some of the trustees really were interested in, I think, a little bit more understanding too of why the dam. This was the original path of the river. You can actually really see where the indentation is, where it goes down. That was where the river used to go. So we have some tough choices ahead of us.
There's a question?
Yeah.
Did you have these pictures to show them?
Yeah. I made a little PowerPoint presentation of some of the.
Got a copy to take home, I think.
Yes, I actually, if I had had a little bit more time, I was going to print it all off so that you guys could have to just sort of go over the basics, because even if no matter what, the status quo isn't going to work here, and the only reasonable thing to do is to look at it at the same time as we're looking at the sluiceway and the dam and all of that. 1 to 4 feet is the projection for this area. There's nothing controversial about that. That's how much sea level is going to rise by 2100. So even if you take the most conservative view, this is going to be happening a lot more. The most recommended thing to do for sea level rise is, when you can, to retreat. So you can either retreat or you can reinforce or redesign. And we have an opportunity to do a little bit of retreating and a little bit of redesigning. So there's a lot of talking about that. Also, just the notion of flood resilience and how we're expecting more severe rainstorms and all of that. So that was good, because I think.
From costs of maintenance.
Right.
And, if there is an option, we could just raise all of this up. We could just bring in a bunch more fill, reinforce the seawall some more, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and nobody is going to help us pay for that, because it's not the recommended course of action. So it was interesting, they're right in the middle of the fundraising for the capital campaign for the library, and it's like, how much of that do we want to get eaten up by this kind of issue, just to kind of double down on the status quo. One good thing is that the harbor is going to get a little bit bigger, potentially. So if we do it in a smart way, we actually do have a lot of opportunities. So we talked about that, and then one thing that just came up that I'm going to go to on the 28th, if anybody's interested, the George Mitchell Center does a lot of talks about sustainability issues, and they've done a lot of talks about dams. And the one that's just coming up now is When Resiliencies Collide, Systems Thinking for Dam Removal in the Face of Climate Change. Great. So it's, we're definitely not the only ones thinking about it. Only other thing, there's a Historic Resources Committee meeting. They continue to chip away at many things. One of the things that they are, we don't hear a lot about here, because it's just been quite well taken care of by others, is Curtis Island, and the buildings out there, and they've gotten grants for windows and things, and are working on continuing to develop and maintain a punch list of these are all the things that need to happen. They would like to see some kind of buildings inspection, probably by a professional at some point,
see.
similar to what we need on the Opera House, just to, somebody to go through and say,
You can copy the RFP from here.
yeah, maybe we'll just
Fine.
bundle or something.
Not a bad idea.
But
Not a bad idea at all.
there were,
Actually, it's a good idea.
the historic districts and the plaque program is still definitely going strong. There's been lots of interest in
Historic buildings.
having the plaque with the date on your building, so you can pick up an application in the town office. That's been well received, and
Great.
a variety of other things.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Audra?
Yes, so I just wanted to remind everyone that on October 30th at 6 PM, there'll be the MDOT public meeting on the Rawson Avenue Bridge. So I just.
Here.
Yes, here in the French conference room. So I'd really like to encourage as many people as possible to come out and, make your position on what you would like done with that bridge known to MDOT, because this is our chance as a community to let everyone know what we'd like to see there.
October 30th. At what time?
6 p.m.
PM. In the French conference room.
Got it. Anything else, Audra?
Yes, so in regards to the Streetlight Project, I'd like to give an update on that. We've finalized the inventory. We've submitted our acquisition paperwork to CMP. That's been a bit delayed because of the storms and the power outages.
Sure.
But hopefully, we should hear by the end of the week that we've purchased the streetlights. We had a meeting with the 6 other towns that are involved with the conversion project to pick a installer. And the installer will, the idea is that we enter into a long-term maintenance agreement with the installer. So we all agreed on who that would be. So that's moving forward. The next phase of the project is we'll receive our investment grade audit, and that's kind of the point of no return when we start really moving the project forward. And the temperature of the lights that we chose are on back order. So I'm guessing probably maybe January, February is around the time when installation will occur. In regards to the website, the site map is pretty much finalized. The next stage will be the migration. So I think, we're kind of at a point where it would be good to have that meeting that we talked about where we get some input in regards to what we would like to see.
About a workshop? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, a
We
workshop.
talked about, we called it that, I think.
Yeah, I think a workshop's a good way to explain it.
We could do a retreat.
Retreat.
We never do those. The school board does.
Brainstorming session. Yeah, well, it's a little past brainstorming, but.
One question to go back about your streetlights. The one question the Energy Committee had is they wanted to help with identifying maybe which lights we no longer needed to use. Has there been any work on that or changes?
So since we're going to go with smart controls, we felt that the project is going to most certainly be delayed, I think, way past an acceptable period of time if we have to think about what we want to keep and what we want to get rid of. Because I think that, we don't want to go sort of neighborhood by neighborhood and light by light or come up with, go through the policy-making process around that. So the idea is, since we have smart controls, we will just replace as is. And if we find that there are lights that we want to turn off, we can turn them off. Or if there are lights that we want to dim down, we can dim them down, turn them up, whatever the case may be.
Okay, that's great.
So I think that would be probably a good
Yeah, could you speak?
good point of time for the Energy Committee to get involved, maybe going around neighborhood to neighborhood and finding out more about what's wanted.
Yeah.
That sort of public outreach and engagement around that piece of it, I think will be really
That also
helpful.
relates to standards for lighting and what levels of lighting, so that's great, gets complicated.
Yes.
All right. Anything,
There's Anita now, and we just finished that part of the conversation.
Anita? Anyway, anything else?
That's my big updates.
Good. I don't have anything that I want to add at this point, so we want the approval of the minutes for both September 17th and October 8th.
I have no corrections.
Do you, go ahead, Nelson.
It's just
Which one?
the first one in our packet.
September 17th.
Okay. Okay. So where it says I thanked, Allison spoke, it should be of her, not just spoke her. Here, I'll actually turn this off so everybody can follow along. It wasn't the Parks and Rec Department that was responsible for the trash cans. It was Public Works that I was thanking. If Parks and Rec played a supporting role later, I was unaware at the time and didn't acknowledge them. Then down here, instead of this where it says, I just think the point of what I was saying was lost in here about the bridge. Now, of course, I can't.
The Rossin Bridge.
Can't read my comment here, but instead of that, could you replace it with McKellar emphasized that she felt that pedestrian access over the bridge was a high priority for the town, even if MDOT funding is not available. The lack of access poses safety risks for residents and school-age children walking to town. Is that okay with everybody? It was just, then, is that it for there? Oh, no, here we go. Shoot, yeah, that's the thing, is there's a few stuff. This should be changed to, should be in, buildable lot to be allowed to be sold as a buildable lot, and that it proposes the sale to a private owner. Include rights to the detention pond. I think it's more like responsibility for the detention pond, right?
Yeah.
That's what we discussed.
Then CDAC should be with an E in there. Then there's a possibility the land has come back on the market. I just think that kind of speculation about things is just not appropriate for select board minutes. The Fridays for future, there should be no apostrophe. Sea shepherd should be like shepherd, I believe, not not like that. Falciani noted that the harbor report is out. If anyone were reading that, I don't think you could be, if they came and said, can I have the harbor report? I think it's the harbor water quality report. If we just add that in, it would be better. And hopefully we'll get lucky and there'll be nothing else. Oh, no. McKellar recognizes the select board doesn't need to approve the privately funded project, but if the town is to be the fiscal agent, it would still be nice to sign off on a final design. Actually, so as to not belabor it, I wrote something up. Here we go. It is important, and so to strike the part there and just say, it is important and appropriate that the select board approve the project and process. McKellar stated that she felt the project was ready and that the final design could now be left to the best judgment of the design committee. The whole point of what I was saying there was that, and I think there was agreement on it too, that when the town acts as a fiscal agent to receive donations without, tax exempt donations or tax deductible donations, that it's important that the select board approve that. But I very much said that I thought at this point we had approved that and that they could
Proceed.
Yeah, that we didn't want to micromanage it at that point. So I just didn't want
I agree.
and I don't remember anybody saying, no, I want the final design to come back.
That's correct.
I can give you an update on that.
No, there's no update. It's about the minutes.
We're reviewing the meeting minutes.
I understand,
Let's just
but
correct
I
the
can give you an
meeting
update
minutes.
about,
But I just didn't want to, but the point of it was that I think we were saying that they could just,
That's correct.
they were fundraising for it.
Correct.
They could now choose, if any of us wanted to get involved in the design, we could go to their meetings and stuff, but that no final design
Right.
needed to be approved. And
I agree.
but Mark can give us, I don't,
Well,
I want-
first.
okay,
We got to finish the
Okay.
minutes. This is the
Yep.
purpose of the agenda item.
okay, all right, I was just,
No, go ahead. You roll when I roll.
walkability should be one word. and we're looking good. Okay.
All right. Is that in that one?
Yes,
Are
that-
there any other comments on that?
She got them, September.
She got it. Motion?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes from September 17th, including Allison's corrections.
Second.
Discussion? All's in favor? 4-0. Okay. How about October, I've lost the date already. What is the date? 8th. Any comments on October 8th?
I don't think I
I didn't have any.
had any. Let me just scroll through. Yep. Nicely done, Kendall.
So too. I agree. Can I get a motion for October 8th?
I move that we accept the minutes as presented for October 8th.
Second.
Discussion. All's in favor?
I wasn't here.
301? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's.
Okay, on to the consent agenda item. Tonight, we have two items on the consent agenda, the first of which, and I'm going to speak to my microphone, otherwise Bruce will yell at me. The consent agenda, the first item is the approval and renewal of the Vitro licenses and lodging licenses for the Camden Windward House, the Town Motel, the Inn at Camden Place, and Frannies Bistro. The second item on the consent agenda is the acceptance of a donation from the Atlantic Engine Company for the purchase of safety jackets. Are there any objections to the items on the consent agenda? Not hearing any, they are hereby, both items inclusive are hereby adopted. The next item on the agenda will be a public hearing for the renewal of liquor licenses for the application of Frannies Bistro at 55 Chestnut Street, the application of the Waterfront Restaurant at 48 Bayview Street, and we are not addressing the application of 16 Bayview at this moment because it's incomplete. With that said, I'll just preface the public hearing that the purpose of the public hearing is to get public input on, for the benefit of the select board for any pros, cons, or comments on each liquor license. We would ask anybody in the public who wants to speak to the liquor license to please come forward, identify yourself, and speak up here. Keep your comments brief, to the point, and direct all questions and comments through me. When all the public has had an opportunity to make a comment on any of these licenses, I will close the public portion and revert to decision by the select board. There will be no more input taken from the public unless the select board has a question of someone who has previously spoken. With that said, I would like to open up the discussion for the public on the application of Frannies Bistro at 55 Chestnut Street. John, would you like to speak for, against, or just speak to it?
Absolutely. So I'm Jack Neal, and I own Frannies Bistro over on Chestnut Street. And we're coming to the end of our first year. It's been a great year. We had a great season. Really, really strong feedback from the community, and it's been a really wonderful time, and we've enjoyed it very much. So it's something we're looking to continue. We've been doing some good food. We get wonderful reviews online about everything. Everything's been really good comments. We have fresh seafood we're doing. We're working with local farmers and local foragers. We're providing jobs for the community. We've got some neat things going on. It's been really nice. We like being part of the Camden community.
Tell us about some of the specialties of the house. Curious.
It's a bistro, so we've got the steak frites, we got the fries, we got the steak. It's on the wood fire. It's doing wonderful things. We've been doing a lot of locally fished seafood. We've got the halibut that's been running the last few weeks. Possibly some cod coming up. We do scallops. Scallop season's going to be starting up soon. Getting some nice local diver scallops and things. We do scallops with some mussels that come from Islesboro. It's a great grower out of that area. that really gets great reviews with the grits, because, grits is a big Maine dish, and we've been having a lot of fun with that.
Oh, yeah.
And we do vegetarian. We're back into the roasted root vegetables for the fall season. So we've got that. It's been getting amazing compliments on. We have fresh house-made dumplings. We do spring rolls using Duck Trap Farms, smoked shrimp. There's all sorts of local stuff that goes on, and there's all sorts of really neat food. And we have specials all the time, and we're looking at what to do next.
What's your overall schedule for now and the future?
Right now, we're actually tapping back a little bit. We're doing Wednesday through Saturday for the high season. We were doing Tuesday through Saturday, 5:30 to close. And so we're going to have a little bit less, a little more family time, and kind of enjoy our winter and still provide a good place to go.
Open through the winter.
Oh, you are staying open through the
Open
winter?
through the winter. I got nothing else to do.
Oh, boy.
But no, we're looking forward to it. We had a great winter last year. It was really good turnout and feedback. So we're looking to carry it forward again. So
Oh, that's great. For some reason, I
In the
thought you
winter,
were
it's so
not
cozy.
seeing-
You kind of don't feel like you feel like you're somewhere else. It's like,
Yeah.
it's sort of transported.
And
It's really
that's
nice.
just it. It really is a nice, comfortable, cozy spot. My wife's done an
Yes.
amazing job in the front. And it's a great place to come. A little snow on the ground, and we're there, cooking up.
Thanks so much for coming, Jack. We
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me. I really appreciate it.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak to this application from the public? Not seeing any hands, I will close the public discussion and revert to the select board.
I will make a motion that we accept the application of Frannies Bistro at 55 Chestnut Street for a renewal of their, I believe, Class 1 liquor license.
Second?
Any discussion? All's in favor? 4-0. Thanks again, Jack.
What's the difference between, what are the different classes of liquor licenses?
The costs beyond other thing.
Oh, never mind.
There's a,
On the application, though, and you can see it all.
in the application,
Yeah.
they're
I
listed.
never dive too
Yeah,
deep
I'm not
into
an expert
those.
on it either.
I'll admit.
A lot of extraneous pages in our packet.
Like scroll. Somebody will tell me if something's wrong.
Good night, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Sure. The second application we'll address will be the application of the Waterfront Restaurant at 48 Bayview Street, which I'm sure Jen is not familiar with.
Never been there.
And is there anybody here from the public who'd like to comment for, against, or just discuss this application? Not seeing any hands, I'll close public and revert to select board.
I make a motion that I think you should recuse yourself from making the motion, I'll do it for you. I recommend that we approve the application of the Waterfront Restaurant at 48 Bayview Street. Having never been there before, I don't know.
I said my first word sitting on the bar. Truly. Second that motion.
In discussion, all those in favor, 4-0. Thank
I don't know
you.
what it says about how I was parented.
And with that,
Right, yeah.
we'll look to a motion to convene as wastewater commissioners.
I make a motion that we exit as Select Board and convene as wastewater commissioners.
Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Thank you. And the first item as wastewater commissioners we want to talk about is I&I enforcement. And for the public, you might want to explain what I&I means again.
Yeah, inflow and infiltration. We're trying to eliminate that fresh water getting into the sewer system that overloads a couple of our pump stations and causes sanitary sewer overflows into the harbor. So that's what we're
Thank you,
trying to do for a number of years here,
For years.
chipping away at it. So recently, we sent some certified letters out to a certain, for, let's see, a half a dozen, no, it ended up being 3 people, or 3 residents that hadn't been responding to the letters to let us in their houses to do the inspection into the basements. And we have ended up with 2 that, one is settled out of court, and so that's on an ongoing process. And one we have not been able to serve. And Bill can probably fill you in on what he's doing there for that.
Okay, so one out of court, one non-service to date, and the third is,
And there were some others that got wind that they might be served, and so we got into the rest of those houses. They allowed me in. Yeah, but there's just one more left that hasn't either been served, that accepted the certified letters and have not responded to letting us in to do the inspection.
one.
One left.
So that's not the one that you were just speaking about, that you have not been able to serve, or is it?
The one that we have, has been served, they accepted the certified letter and did not contact us to do the inspection of the plumbing.
So there's really two that are hanging.
And then there's
One
two
was
that
not-
are in some kind of,
So the third one is in
Enforcement
process
action.
as well? You said one was settled out of court. What's happened to the third one?
well, the third one, there hadn't been any enforcement action yet.
Okay.
So that's something we'll have to decide to do,
Okay.
when to do that. As far as inspections, we have 30 buildings left in town that have not been inspected. The plumbing has been inspected. So a lot of those, the certified mail didn't get to them. Maybe their address changed, it was the wrong address. So right now, we're working on generating a new list and trying to track them down.
Right.
So there'll be another round of certified letters going out. We have 66 buildings that need repairs. I assume that most of those will be done this summer. I haven't heard from them, so I'm going to have to track them down and see where they stand, what the status is.
So the total to date of all the batch has been 66, which needs some correction.
Right. Another 30 needs to be inspected.
Right.
And then the two in enforcement, and the other one that we probably ought to
Yep.
go ahead and
Yep.
start the enforcement process.
On these 30 buildings that we've served a number of times, this has not been the first time that I'm not
The ones
serving,
that
not
haven't
serving.
been-
The certified, that they haven't responded, they haven't been inspected, and they haven't been inspected because they haven't responded. Is that correct?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, all right.
No, yeah, some of the certified mails came back that said, it was the wrong address.
Yep.
They had moved.
Okay.
There was a reason why they didn't get the certified mail, other than just rejecting it.
Right. Is there any in the batch of 30 who have been notified in the past and have not responded?
No,
Okay.
no.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I have can I ask this? If people have moved and we're sending them certified letters about the property, maybe we have
Well,
the wrong.
a lot of these
Oftentimes don't live there.
are, these are second homes.
Okay,
Most of them you'll
Okay.
find are second homes.
so that's something that we, in theory, shouldn't be terribly difficult to track
Well,
down.
Yeah, but they should be paying taxes.
Well,
Right.
that's the problem, is that we use the tax bills. We are still
so-
using the tax bills
For the
to,
the address.
Yeah,
physical
some of
address, okay.
some of these are, for example, they're limited liability
Oh, sure.
LLCs,
Sure.
but I found a wonderful website that the state of Maine has when there's some sort of corporation. They have to have, they're listed in the main site, and they have the agent for that corporation.
Right.
So now I've got a name and address to send it to.
Okay,
So
great.
Can I ask a question? Are any of those in arrears for taxes? If the-
oh, I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you that. We
Curious
can
about
certainly
That would be
look and see
interesting
if
to
they
find out.
are.
Yeah, because if the certified letters are coming back, that means the tax bills are going to the wrong place.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good
But
point.
a lot of the time, people don't look
It's
at
like
their, it's
escrow
with your mortgage, like I never have to,
I
I
understand
never
that.
open anything from the town, but,
I'm curious.
Yeah, but you probably look
at
at,
least I never did before.
most people.
Oh, yeah, I really
We should-
sympathize with
We
people,
should check the
actually.
tax rolls just to make sure, of course, but that's where I was driving at. Yeah, certified letter is a little different than a piece of mail, but anyway, that's getting here or there.
Right.
Okay, so the next, go ahead, Allison.
Do we have anybody that is actually just saying, you can't, I'm aware, yes, you found me, but you're not going in my basement, or?
yes. Yeah, this one
One he's
that
mentioned.
hasn't, we haven't started enforcement on.
Haven't.
Right.
And we haven't filed the lawsuit yet, or yet on that one.
Right, correct.
And why wasn't that done before?
Well, we decided to
They weren't
start
on the
with-
list of 4 that
We originally,
But why not?
chosen. Well, that's one of the reasons why we're coming with you, or coming before you tonight to talk about this, is do you want to move forward with that one?
If I had known that there was a definitive, like,
Instance.
that's what we're looking for, the people that it's not a, oh, we missed it and it's an innocent mistake, but I would have liked to have known then that there was that's a data point that puts you in a different category.
Well, they're the one in that category, so I guess it's, do you want to move forward with that
Yes.
one? We could
Yes, I wonder.
wait and serve some
Do we
of
need to know
the,
who it is first? We got to know the names of the others first, but
it's going to become.
I won't
public.
change my mind.
It's going to become public very quickly, but the issue is, do we want to proceed with legal action against this one individual? And that's the question that the board has to answer tonight.
Are there any extenuating circumstances that you think we should know about?
About this one?
Person? Do
Not
they
that
have
I'm-
a defense about why you can't come in or anything like that?
I have not heard from them, yeah, so I really
Haven't
can't.
heard from them.
No, I received the green card that says that they signed off on the letter. So they've got the notice that if they don't contact us, then
We take
there would be
action.
legal action taken.
Oh, that's a little different than like, so somebody signed off on a letter. I mean,
They received the letter.
that's all we really know.
Yes, yeah.
you're looking for somebody where we've gotten in touch with them and they've said, no, you are not coming to my house.
Right.
Yeah.
I
'Cause I
did
still-
knock on the door this morning because I was hoping to avoid legal action, and that unfortunately there was nobody home, so
Okay.
I did.
Want to tell us that? You should, I feel like that would be a great time just to
I-
email a name out and maybe.
Well, because we can talk about the name, but I think we should decide whether this is going to be an action or not, because it shouldn't be a function of who the person is. It shouldn't be a decision based on who the person is making
It's
our
just odd because
decision.
it's a different format than the last time we did this.
Well, and I guess that was one of the questions, is because we've kind of got, we had a whole group of people who'd
Right.
been informed and they hadn't, they'd accepted the certified mail and they hadn't,
Well, then, yeah, we have
Called
to just
in-
follow the same.
Yeah, the same
Right, well,
procedure.
what I guess I'm saying is, do you want to wait until we've had a chance to try and serve notice to those 30 and then pick like another group of 4?
What's the advantage? If we
It
have,
doesn't need to be a lottery. Just we've got one we know.
Yeah.
Unless there's something I'm not considering. And
I would,
Feels like almost,
I mean, it doesn't, you can do it however you'd like
Yeah,
to. We
understood.
just want to,
My concern for me, if we go after, say, 30,
yeah. It's, we're not,
full-time job for
right,
me.
well, we've got one we know that fits the bill, right?
yes,
Yes.
we do.
Yeah.
Fits in the same criteria as the others that.
Yes. The other
Oh, well,
three.
hold on, though, because there were others in that batch. that-
Remember, too, that when we were going to serve 4,
Right.
we got most of them off the list because
Right.
they heard the addresses and they said, uh-oh, I better
Open the
make a
door.
phone call.
Open
What
the door.
happened to the four that we were going to serve? What happened to those specific 4?
Before we got the notices out, I think we're down to, was it 2 or 3, Bill? I think it was 3.
Bill?
There were 4, 2 complied and allowed inspections. The third one did not do that until after the suit was filed. That person is paying the town back all the legal fees and filing fees that were involved because of that delay. But that person has allowed the inspection, there were no issues. And then the fourth one is the one that Dave was
we're
talking about,
discussing.
that
Okay.
I have to file, unfortunately,
Haven't
a
found them.
notice in the paper to serve them that way, since they appear to be avoiding opening the door, according
Right.
to the sheriff's
They're
department.
avoiding service.
Yes, I have a quick question, though. Why is this one particular one different than the other 30?
Yes.
You've mentioned one is different, and I think this might help you all. You can certainly choose that person, and if you decide to go after that person, we do have to say that person's name. And you authorize the vote,
Haven't
but
we already decided to go after that person?
I was just wondering why that one is different than the other 30, because I wasn't following it.
Yeah,
so
that
one's
one,
from the
they
previous
accepted.
list that they chose the 4 from.
That's
Got the 30?
One
Didn't
at
we
a-
choose
one
the
at a
4
time.
from the 30?
No, that's 30's different. So the other list,
Where's that, can you bring that other list back?
I think it's confusing because it was about 30 people as well at the time. So out of that list, you chose 4.
Yes.
Pretty much when everybody heard that this was happening, they all started making phone calls and scheduled inspections.
When I did the courtesy
brought
Facebook
them-
post.
Right,
And,
that put them off the list. And all that's left is this one that we're talking about right now.
But this person was one of the 4 that was served.
No.
No, he
was really helpful
he's the
before when
last
things were
one,
written down
he's the
for us
last
so
one
we could
left
look at it.
that received and signed for the certified mail.
Right.
That told them that, you know,
So
you gotta
he's-
let us in, or,
So we have 2 people we're talking about. We have one of the original 4 that has not responded. Is that correct?
You're not?
It hasn't been served yet.
Sure.
Lawsuit. They didn't respond to the
Okay.
mailing.
Certified mail.
And then we have this one person from the 30. That's a separate person from,
Like to text.
that's,
separate list from the 30. The 30 have not, we haven't been
so
able to
we
find
have
them yet.
one person of the 4 that wasn't served, and then one person of the remaining 30 that has not replied. Or are those ones the same one? That's what I'm not clear on.
They are not the same. no.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
So, go ahead, Allison, and well, someone,
I no longer feel comfortable moving. I'd like it to be written down like it was before, so that we have a list and in categories. Just, I feel like I'm confused and that there's no result.
Yeah, I shouldn't have mentioned the 30
without seeing
that
things
haven't got
written
the
down.
certified mail yet.
I'm a little confused too, but it wasn't one of the 4th person of the 4. Didn't we already approve them being filed? So we don't need to discuss that one.
Right.
That one already has been approved to be filed, a lawsuit. Good, done. All right. Is there anybody else that has the same category that's come up since that's in the same category as those original 4?
Yes, that's this one that we wasn't part of the 4 that you picked.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that one is in the same category of the original 4, and the question would be, do we want to wait a little while to see if there's more in the batch of 30 that will fall into that category, or act upon the one right now?
Okay, can I confirm, maybe I'm back on track, if the next thing I say is true.
This is the test, go ahead.
So,
Waiting.
does that mean that, so that whatever the list was that was also close to 30, that we chose the 4 from? Is there nobody else left on that list?
Nobody else, correct.
Except the one person.
This one person that's now popped themselves into that same category?
Correct. That's what I hear, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's what I'm hearing.
And then this other list of 30 is the where they're like, we'll just not go there.
Not yet,
Yeah.
not yet,
They're different.
not yet, that's correct.
Okay.
So,
Oh, those are the people that need to fix stuff.
No,
No,
those are the
that's
ones.
60, that's
Those are the ones we
66.
need to officially
I can help you
serve
with
notice to, or
it is confusing. So
The 30, we sent certified mail to, and we couldn't find them.
Yeah,
essentially.
it seems to me we've set a precedent
Yeah.
for the category, the original 4, when we would decide to file a lawsuit. Since that time, one more has come to the table in the same category, only one.
Right.
We do need to say that it wasn't.
Yeah, that's fine.
No address or name was a secret before it was all written down.
Yeah, it was.
But for some reason, we're like dancing around it.
Well, no, we can come at it, but I just want to be categorically I just want to make sure we're in the right category situation, then we can identify the person. It
Now
was.
we've made it to such a big
So
deal.
There was one nth person we'll identify that we want to do this above and beyond the 4, but in the same category of non-respondent as the original 4 that we filed lawsuits on.
They're
All right.
in the same category,
All right.
that's right.
I would like to make a motion that we serve that one person, add them, so that it's now,
Yeah.
what was 4 is now a list of 5.
Correct.
We're not going to make the motion until we're not going to reveal the name after I think now is the appropriate time to
Yeah,
say the
that's
name.
fine.
And then we can,
That's fine,
not that
that's
there's
fine.
anything wrong with the motion, but.
No, Dave, do you have the information?
Correct motion.
Yes, it's 114 Mullino Road,
114 Molyneux Road. Okay,
Charles Allwine,
okay,
How do you spell that?
Allwine.
okay. So the person's been identified, you want to amend your motion?
I make the motion that we serve Mr. Allwine at 114 Molyneux, the same suit that we served the other 4.
A land use enforcement action, yes.
Thank you,
Wow,
Counselor.
that's sewer over there, huh?
I didn't know that
surprises
either.
me.
Yeah. Do I have a second?
A second.
Yeah, thank you. Discussion. All's in favor? 4-0. Thank you on that item, and keep us posted as the batch
surprised.
hopefully doesn't increase.
Very surprised.
We want to bring
Well,
that
it's all
down.
these people now that are not, I mean, we got to start cracking down on the people that haven't done the repairs.
Yes, yeah, and I was hoping to have that done by now, but we're down a person in the department, so that definitely slowed me down.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
really sad.
Yeah, good for him, but
Good, yeah.
Yeah.
happy for him,
He
but
was
not
great.
happy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was disappointing to hear. I thought he was gonna eventually, like, you're gonna groom him to be you one day. But,
Still a chance, Allison.
Chance.
I don't know
mean, you're
if he would like that, the way you
Yeah.
worded that, but
that's what did it.
The second item on the, as wastewater commissioners, we're talking about your request for a variance to the sewer use ordinance. Would you please define that variance you're requesting?
yeah, there's a resident that is building a second building on their property. It's essentially pretty much an apartment. And the sewer use ordinance says if you have two buildings that have road frontage, that both buildings have to have a separate lateral, sewer lateral, their own pipe going
Right.
to the main sewer pipe out in the street. But as it turns out, they've asked me if they could tie them together. Like I say, it's an apartment, there's very few fixtures, and the land can't be subdivided right now.
That was my first question.
So that's a big deal.
Absolutely.
This would be
The-
one of those accessory apartments
Oh.
that are
That
600
we
square
love.
feet or under.
Oh,
So
okay.
Yeah,
that's-
Okay.
small,
Got
small
it.
building.
It's up on,
Rent it year-round.
it's up on Ross and it's being built right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's being built, we're not sure what they're going to do.
Okay, do they have plans to, maybe if too bad we can't require, like, as a condition of the variance, that be rented as a year-round rental rather than a,
Oh, you are really getting picky. No, I agree, though. But usually to the code, you're right. The only time you would have a problem with this is because you want separate metering, and if they could in the future do separate. If they cannot be, the lot cannot be separated, it has to be same owner, period. So therefore, there's just 1 meter would work for one line to our main.
do we even have meters for the sewer? Don't we just go off of the,
Number of
The water?
fixtures.
Yeah, so the water use, yeah. The drinking water use is how we bill. Yeah, yeah.
Inflow equals outflow, sometimes.
But that's what we assume, yes.
Sometimes. Okay, cool. All right.
shouldn't we normally have something, do we have backup material for granting a variance, or is there a plan, or?
You need a motion for that?
Yeah, I need your approval to do that. I can't do that on my own. It's up to the wastewater commissioners to do that.
To decide on a variance on
I
it.
will say there's only one stipulation. I asked them to actually camera their sewer line,
Yeah.
which they did for me. And I found one component of it that's not up to the specifications in the sewer use ordinance. So I want to condition that on them replacing that
Is,
Y that's not
oh, I see.
a legal Y, so.
See. I
Are
see.
you comfortable doing it other than that? With that?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion that we okay the request for variance to sewer use ordinance for that residence on the condition that they fix the Y that needs to be replaced.
Yep.
I feel like I should abstain because I wasn't here in the room when Dave was presenting.
Oh,
Second it, because I was waiting for the discussion part, but
Okay,
I'll
I'll-
second for the purposes of discussion.
thank you.
I
All
just
right,
realized, it just came to me as I was saying it.
very good. Discussion. Oh, Allison.
Thank you. I don't, just we don't know who this, just in terms of procedurally, I think I'm more comfortable when there's something written down. Like, I don't think we can just sort of give like one golden ticket to one sewer use ordinance variance to be passed out to, that person that we were talking about. Even just scratched on do we have an address or a plan, or maybe Bill, you could advise me on why,
I agree, it should be to a name of an owner and address, that you would need that information for your motion.
but no plan or anything, just,
That part seems pretty straightforward, it's just a function. The lateral would literally be a physical line from the street to the second unit, as opposed to just doing it all on
but we
site.
wouldn't want to be granting them a blanket variance for the property to whatever. It's just nice if it says that in it. There's some document that says, this is what they have the variance for.
Right, I think you can vote on it, and Dave can write it up with more specificity if you're comfortable with what
I
he's
mean, I'm
saying.
fine with what's been said,
Yeah.
just how
Yeah.
do we, the record-keeping part of it
Yeah.
for the minutes and.
I'm working on it.
He's going to put a
It's
condition
actually
in
on
there
Ames
about that
Terrace,
wide being
sorry, it's not
replaced.
on Ross.
Ames Terrace?
It's the, you know where the trail comes in, and we've got a sewer easement, the trail that comes in off of, through the woods and
Yeah.
by the stream?
Collapsing culvert and
Yeah.
that's where a lot of the
Yeah.
sediment comes from too.
Do we have an address?
I'm working on
I
that.
actually even have like
It's
tons of pictures.
Denise and Martin White.
White.
Are the
Oh.
names. I don't know the number on Ames Terrace.
I'm looking.
All right, let's get identify that for the motion, please.
Also may be able to get there faster.
I can show you the little stream running back there. This is one of the sources of the sedimentation problem that we're having. That's the is this the pathway, Jeremy, here? Was that-
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, so, yep. There's a garage, old
That's what it's doing in this
shed that-
area.
garage that they tore down.
Oh. Oh, I can almost see it. Here it is on the,
You have the front?
it's the lot number 25.
That
Now I
helps.
found it.
That'll work, tax map and lot number will work.
Tax map and lot number.
Oh, we just knew the tax map.
What's that?
Is it
And
15
I
names?
lost it again, so. Right,
That's
Ames
what as we
Terrace.
said. Thanks, Danita.
Here, let's find out.
He said,
15.
he said it's on Ames Terrace.
It's definitely 15.
15 Ames Terrace.
I've got a team now,
All right.
team of 3,
Modify the motion, Mark?
maybe 4.
I modify the motion, adding in the name and address of the,
It's Denise A. and Martin J. White
Okay.
at 15 Ames
Okay.
Terrace.
Oh,
The
this
address should be
virus is back
sufficient.
again. This is really.
Map, appears to be map 114, lot 25.
Yep. Thank you.
so please add that to the motion.
And second, you approve that again, Allison? You okay with that revised motion?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Any more discussion? Bill?
I forget if you said it, but did you indicate it's conditioned upon that wide joint that Dave is requiring?
I did,
Oh,
yeah.
missed that.
Next time I'll have the names and
Yeah,
addresses.
that would be helpful. Thank you. Any more discussion? No? All's in favor?
I'm abstaining because I was out of the room when Dave presented
Okay.
the original information, so I'm a little,
All right. So
We'll check y'all
that's the
up.
right thing to do.
it's approved.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Motion to adjourn as wastewater commissioners and reconvene.
I make a motion, we adjourn as wastewater commissioners and reconvene as the select board.
Second.
All's in favor? 4-0, okay. On to the agenda, the next item would be the discussion and presentation on the solar feasibility study. Jeremy, how do you want to approach that? Is there an overhead or just discussion? Are you,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can just, we were looking at where we should do solar, some more additional solar, and we were talking about Sagamore Farm, and then we got into a broader discussion on should we kind of have a consultant look at this for us and what our options are, rather than having a installer give us what the options are. We decided to hire a solar consultant to do that. And his name's Rich Roughgarden. It's been great to work with him, and he developed this feasibility study, and he's got a handful of options in there. And I think that's a starting point. I will say we are going to venture down the road of looking at, since the new clean energy bill was passed in Augusta, our law was passed, we're able to have community co-op kind of solar systems now. So beyond what Rich has done, I think we're going to start looking at trying to facilitate or work with some property owners that have large buildings, and seeing if we can use some of their buildings for our solar. And I've had conversations with a couple of entities on that already. But then I guess I'll leave it to Rich to start, if that's what Sound good to
That's
you?
fine, that's fine, whatever you think is best. Rich?
Okay,
Rich, want to introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are?
my name's Rich Roughgarden. I'm an electrical engineer, and have had my own solar business for the last 12 years, designing, installing residential as well as commercials, photovoltaic systems. And so as I've been getting older and trying to retire more, I've been stopping doing installations and looking for other types of work, and feasibility studies is one way to use that expertise. I've done a feasibility study for Freeport, and Freeport now is evaluating proposals from installers. They're in a similar situation as Camden, that they don't have enough real estate for the amount of solar that they need. They're evaluating a proposal where the actual generation of the solar that would be credited to Freeport would be in Skowhegan, and the power would be exported to CMP, and the credits would be attributed to the Freeport municipal and their waste treatment. The school system is not participating in that. So to get to your feasibility study, basically, in order to do a feasibility study, you need to do an audit of how much power is being used. And so you got a lot of all your power bills, and I created an audit spreadsheet, and then I take that spreadsheet of what you've used, and then I do a projection. And the projection spreadsheet is basically taking the same amount of usage and applying the current rate structure to it. And then I had another little caveat, was the Sagamore Farms facility that's now, that's been for close to a year now, I guess, has been.
It's over a year.
Over a year, it's been generating power. And it kind of, I had to make an adjustment to my report because you didn't get credited for all that power.
That's correct.
So once I had the information to do that, I was able to subtract the uncredited kilowatt hours from your total.
I see.
And come up with a total. So once we know that information, then it's a matter of saying, well, how much does the system cost to generate that power? And I use typical energy figures for that. And so that in order to do an economic analysis of this. The other thing the report does is it provides a brief explanation of the new solar legislation, which really has a major impact on medium general service accounts that pay demand charges. The old net metering rules would not compensate for demand charges. Now, customers that are medium general service can recover 75% of their total connection charges. And then you have your small general service that can recover 100% of your demand charges. So so I kind of looked at, if we set up all accounts with the medium general service net metering, or with the general service net metering, which means you would lose the demand charges. Or there's a third option where the construction of the system could have a meter for crediting medium general service, a separate meter
I see.
for small general service. And that would maximize the kilowatt hour credits as well as the dollar amounts. So that's more of the details that would come further down the road. I also mentioned that the renewable energy credits can be another potential source of revenue. It's kind of a free-floating thing that's hard to predict because the megawatt hour rates and where the states are, where they are sold in. I've worked on a number of systems where we use a local broker, and he's looking for the best rates. And
Sure.
But it's a hard one to count on over the long term, like a 25-year period. And then so when I take all that information into account, I looked at your current real estate, what you have, and I estimated that you could provide about 30% of your power needs from the Camden Public Safety Building, the Public Works Facility, an expansion at the Sagamore Farm site, and then the old tannery site. And the old tannery site, we picked the area, Jeremy and I, that was kind of that back area and leaving the area that's used for the farmer's market alone. And then the Camden Snow Bowl, I called that a marginal site. I didn't include any possible generation there because the whole facility has various types of uses. We talked about carports in the parking lot, but a ski resort in the winter with snow and ice and nobody running into the things that support the solar panels, to me, it just seems like it's very problematic to consider that there. So having said that, if you can get 30% of your power on local sites, is that worth pursuing, or should you look at having installers provide an off-site total for everything? And I think your cost per watt of installation by going with one major system would be beneficial. When you start chopping things up, the cost per watt can go up.
Yeah.
Because it's separate projects, they all have to be managed. And so the big issue then for Camden, either for the 70% or the 100%, is real estate. And I know Camden, Jeremy was telling me they were looking at the old Union Chemical property that was pulled as far as being auctioned. And so you have a choice of either having the town obtain a piece of property that they would control, or the installer that would offer up a piece of property like happened with Freeport. And then there's the various issues about how the control of the property is managed, how when the system is transferred from the investor to the owner, all the ins and outs of how to do that. And that kind of brings me to the other thing, is what is called a power purchase agreement. All nonprofits cannot take advantage of the current 30% federal tax credit, which goes down to 26% in 2020. And so what a lot of nonprofits are doing and are looking for investors to be the owners of the system until the tax advantages are exhausted, which would be the ITC, federal tax credit, plus 6 years of depreciation. And so what is happening recently, for example, Revision Energy, and I know Sundog, they both have partnered with investors to fund these projects and take advantage of the tax benefits. And as far as the eventual owner goes, the benefits to them is the fact that this tax benefit is basically benefits the investor and then can benefit the eventual owner by impacting the buyout price when the tax benefits have been exhausted and the community wants to buy it. And so I did a cash flow analysis of that in here, and what you're looking at, for example, is for the first 6 years, the investor owns the system, and they charge you power at a discounted rate, basically a 5% discount is typical. So you're buying power at a lesser rate during that period of time. And then if you save the savings, you can have an impact on your buyout price. And then when the buyout period comes around, the typical buyout price, I know Sundog Solar at their presentation was offering a buyout price that's about 50% of the installed cost.
Right.
And it's something you really can't say. You have to call it fair market value, because that is what it's defined as being a buyout price. So it has wiggle room in there. And how do you determine fair market value of a solar system? I have yet to see anything that makes a lot of sense to me. So it seems to be tied to a portion of the installation so that you could then do a cash flow. So basically, if you went this route, based on the cash flow I did, you'd have your 6 years of buying discounted power, and then if you took a 5% loan for 50% of the installed cost, that loan would carry you for another 7 years. You'd own the system. So you'd actually own the system in 13 years. At current power rates, the rate of a return on that investment is 278%. If I use a power escalation rate of an average of 2% a year, the return on investment goes up to 485% over 13 years.
Wow.
Now, the spreadsheet is included. I don't know if you've all had to have a copy of the feasibility study.
Yeah,
You just that on in the,
it's the sideways. Keep it down further. It's not the sideways one, it's page,
sideways ones, but thank you for that.
it's after the demand ones.
So after the projected cost, there's a spreadsheet for the owner, and then I do a spreadsheet for the
70 what in the
investor.
packet?
It's this one.
So, and is that the investors, that's the owner spreadsheet, I believe? It's kind of hard. And then I also do a spreadsheet for the investor, and the reason I include that, so that you can see what the benefits are to the investor. And the investor in this situation would have a return of investment of 98% in 6 years, and would net 3.8 million above their cost. And that includes them recovering the remaining principal of, and I'm assuming that they borrowed the money to finance the system.
Sure.
And so, you know, from an economic point of view, it's beneficial to both parties. And so with these feasibility studies, my intent is to provide the information for the town to make a good economic decision and see what the economic benefits are, and then to deal with the issues such as real estate. That's the biggest issue. Real estate and financing. When you come time to buy out, how are you going to finance the buyout? And so based on that information, the last section I usually do is a path forward. And the path forward would be that you'd want to say, agree on your target. Let's build a system that's going to give us X number of kilowatt hours a year. And that may be what was determined in the audit. It may be more. The system I did in here as a scenario is a system that would produce 2.8 million kilowatt hours a year.
Can I just, is there a
Yeah.
page in your report that is the path forward that I could pull up, or is that?
Yes, that's, you back up. It's in the head of all the appendices.
Oh,
It's the last paragraph of the report.
Page 7.
Right, page 7.
Before the
oh,
appendices.
my computer is like
70 of the packet.
70 in the packet, okay. Oh, the path forward, here we go. Thank you, sorry about that.
No problem.
So the feasibility study can provide the information that you can see the economics of this. And once the feasibility issues are understood, you've said, well, you know, the waste treatment plant, for example, is going to have an expansion.
Right.
We estimate they're going to be using so many kilowatt hours a year in addition to what they're using, so maybe we should build a system to accommodate that. Those types of discussions would need to be happening. And once you have your target kilowatt hours per year, you can then send out a request for proposals to installers. And the request for proposals, I've seen them be everything from a straightforward, you know, saying, this is what we want, and this is the box we want you to put it in, to something that looks like a bid specification that only an engineer can understand.
True.
So you want to have a request for proposals that basically, obviously, does the target. We want a system to produce this much power. And then the box you want to put them in is basically installing a system that meets the technical standards for a PV system, like being UL approved, the system installation meeting all the national electrical code, and the solar panels being tier 1 or tier 2 type solar panels, and keeping it as simple as possible so that you can then have an installer give you a proposal that can make sense to everybody, and then you can get more into the weeds of the technical details. So, and then the other parts that you would want to define in the RFP, spell out that you're looking for a PPA proposal, and as far as, and then you're going to have to deal with the control of property, who's going to own the property, and so all those things would be saying, we want a system that's going to generate this much power, that meets certain standards for the system, that is going to be part of a PPA agreement. The PPA agreement, we want to know what our power discount is for the 6 years. We want to know what the buyout level is going to be. And then there's even caveats to that, such as, well, if we're not ready to buy out in 6 years, what happens then? A lot of installers will increase the kilowatt hour rate to try to leverage you to buy out.
Sure.
Because now you're paying more for your solar than you would buying it from CMP. That's one technique. Yes?
Is there any way, maybe we could back up a tiny bit in terms of, just to wrap my head around what, like, before we go into the details of how the PPA would work and what to watch out for, just the basics of, because I don't know how many of these guys you've been talking to throughout this, and some of them may be sort of well-versed on what you've looked at already and where we are, but it's getting a little bit into the weeds for me in terms of what do we need to do now, and what, it looks like we need to either identify property that we already own that we somehow missed in this, or we need to acquire property. And how much land are we looking at, and how much of a process is that in terms of site?
Okay, well, in the report, I identify that to generate that 2.8 megawatt hours a year, you need 7.6 acres of land. And what I used as a kind of a template for the amount of space was your Sagamore Farms.
Yeah, sure. Mark?
I
Well,
have a
but just-
number of
just-
questions that
but-
may
yeah, sure.
clarify some.
But I would think, well, I think that, I agree with that. This is heady technical stuff, and it's easy to get lost in the weeds. But just to step back, and then we'll go into detailed questions. First of all, you say 2.6 is what the metering that you summarized, that was a 2018 town use?
It was both 18 and 19.
Okay, 18, 19. Well, the reason I ask is because in past summaries, we've seen numbers like 2.1. The 2.6 is substantially different from that. That's one.
Okay, so that's about what we're looking at as an average amount that the town
One
uses?
second, I need it. Well, the 2.6 is what the summary spreadsheet that Rich did a great job of pulling together for our town's usage, including Snowball and everything else. And that's why, but he's going to 2.8. There's some cushion in there because you need to do that, because power doesn't stay static. It increases. Wastewater could increase it, other things could increase.
So is that the appropriate amount to
Well, that's a
increase
question.
right now?
That's a question. And then you get into, but another backdrop is, as Audra's mentioned a number of times, we currently have in the town 60, what's Constellation? 60% of RECs right now on the town's 2 point, whatever it is. We have some number that we buy now from on RECs. And I mention that because it goes to one of the points he's as pointed out in this report, he's suggesting approximately 30% could be generated from, at this moment, you've recommended no. It could be solar installation at various buildings, which, as a start, just talking numbers, puts us at near 100% for the moment. Now, that doesn't mean it's a long-term plan.
Hold on, what? That puts us near 100%? I thought that would put us near 30%.
No. We already have 60-some percent of renewable.
So if we're going to talk about RECs, let's try to answer the question. Does that actually matter? When we say we have 60% in certified renewables?
Right, so you're buying power that is 60% coming from renewable sources.
Correct.
And that's what we all, but then every time you say that to anybody, there is an enormous degree of skepticism about whether, it's like when you donate to money overseas, they think, people have a tendency to think that the wool is being pulled over their eyes. What is your expert opinion on?
Well, it's very subjective, as you can see, because you're talking about electrons. So electrons
Right.
moving through wires, they don't have green ones and blue ones, So,
They're trying to figure out a way to label them.
right. So basically, it's
Best.
Exactly.
there's a renewable generation site, and they're selling power to whoever wants to buy it, let's say. And so you have the cost of the power that's being generated, and then you have the cost of getting it to you, the distribution costs. Now, and that would be true with an off-site solar system that would provide Camden, and let's say it's located in Union. There would be a similar situation. The only difference is when you own it, you're not paying those charges anymore.
Sure.
So if you're getting a percentage of green power being credited to you, that's supposedly green power, and people can be skeptical about that, because what you're really getting.
Should we be skeptical?
Well, I mean.
Or should we just say, you know what, if we have this agreement that says 60%, should we feel good about the fact that there's some solar panel or windmill somewhere that is actually just working for us? Or the recs get double sold, all of this stuff?
Well,
Is it better to do it
supposedly there
ourselves?
is. You'd have to look at the legal documents associated with that agreement and how they justify that. But at any given moment, those electrons that you're using can be coming from anywhere.
Well, you could say,
I understand that, but in terms of our goal, I think is to do the best thing in terms of reducing our impact on the environment through the use of electricity. And so sometimes the solar panel on our roof makes us feel warm and fuzzy, but if it really is just a matter of we can do as much good by doubling down and paying more for our electricity and getting 100% certified.
That's definitely an option. I mean, the only fundamental difference between that and developing your own system is it's an economic decision. I mean, because you're going to still be the renewable power coming from, the program that the main PUC is offering. You're still going to have to buy that power. And the other thing you don't have control of with that is the rate structure and how that's going to change over years.
From an economic standpoint, it's definitely, in your opinion, makes sense to not just double down on the rec strategy, but to try to do it ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, that's very
Exactly, yeah.
helpful.
Well, I think one way I would put that is if we're buying it from somebody else, they're there to make a profit.
I get, philosophically, I get it, but
it's
this, we hired him to
I
tell us
understand.
for real.
Making a profit. I go back to some simpler questions. When you say Sagamore, are you talking about the part of the Sagamore land that is clear of trees right now, just expanding that one field, and that's as far as you're going there? Okay, I wanted to know that. Panels and buildings, we'd had a previous study said that the buildings would not support the panels, and that's one of the reasons we weren't looking there. Did you investigate that, and you determined that we have no problems putting panels on those buildings?
The buildings that I saw, I didn't see any issues with them based on my experience. I mean, for commercial projects that have a certain amount of liability, it's often you have a structural engineer evaluate that to determine, because you're really not adding a significant amount of load to buildings with solar panels.
Okay.
And the other, I mean, the more bigger issue on buildings is dealing with the wind loads than the actual weight loads.
absolutely.
Okay. Third question. Solar panel, a lot of discussion about solar panels. China is the biggest manufacturer of solar panels, and there is a tariff on those right now. And how has that affected the solar business?
I found prices, they notched up like earlier, when the tariffs went into effect. But then what happens is all of a sudden now the panels are coming from Singapore, they're coming from South Korea, and other places other than China, which I found very interesting. And then some companies will opening up a small manufacturing facility in the United States so that they can be qualified as U.S. made, even though they may only do a portion of the manufacturing process there. So
basically, that hasn't really changed. People have found a way around those rules.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely find that.
Last question from me. I mentioned earlier in the meeting that we had a guest from York, Maine, from their Energy Committee at our Energy Committee meeting yesterday. And she talked about what York has been doing with this. And one of the things they're also doing is finding a large, I can't remember if they have found a large parcel of land and they're going to do their generation. But one of the things they're doing, they're looking to generate more than just the needs of the municipality, and they're looking to generate more and share it with the town, so much so that in some cases, for people with lower incomes, they can provide either discounted or in some cases free power. So I'd be interested in going beyond just the 7.6 acres and looking to do better than that, because we could improve the town. I mean, we're part of the Global Covenants of Mayors, and, the goals are, I think in 2030, 50% of our energy use is reduced, and in 2050, 100% of our energy expenditure, gas-oriented energy is reduced. So knowing that, how tough is it to do that sort of sharing with the public?
It's not very difficult. In fact, I did a feasibility study since this one for RSU 12, which is 5 municipalities' school system. And their idea was to provide what they needed for the school systems, and they're also including the municipal buildings of those communities, plus what is called a solar farm, where you can designate, we're going to have so much generation and allow people to buy a share in it. And solar farms now, they used to be limited to 10 participants, and now that's almost unlimited. I think it's
And one more thing, as opposed to, I understand that it's less expensive and more efficient to have a big parcel of land and to not do the buildings as well. But there is something to be said, I think, about the statement you make by coming into a town and seeing the solar panels on the buildings. And I think that's an important part of where we're going to do maybe both, and not just park it somewhere way far away and have it look like we're not participating.
Freeport is struggling with that perspective because, their site being in Skowhegan, they were hoping people could drive down Main Street and see something.
Sure.
But they did, even their potential sites were not anywhere close to Main Street. And they were considering carport just in the municipal town office building. And I think that ran into the Historical Society there.
Right. Right.
I think one of the situations, somebody told me once about computers that, and we're dealing with this with fiber optic right now. Well, I can get Netflix now on my TV, and I don't need any more higher speeds for my fiber optic. But in 10 years or 20 years, that's going to change dramatically. If we'd like to have a house or say a police station where all the patrol cars are electrically generated, and that's if we're going to need to prepare for the future, not just for the present. And I think that's real important.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing to have a system now to saying, well, do we want to make the system big enough to charge electric vehicles that maybe the town would own or something?
Right.
I mean, at a small level, I've done that. I've installed a couple of residential systems where we oversized it for electrical car charging, but we had some numbers to work with. If you take a Chevy Bolt that can get 250 miles out on a charge, you can come up with an approximate kilowatt hours you're going to need to keep that car charged.
Sure.
But as you get bigger and there's a lot more unknowns, that gets more difficult to do. I mean, from my perspective, taking a step-by-step approach, but being open to those future expansions would be great. For example, instead of going out and finding 7.6 acres, you found a place that has 20 acres.
Right,
Or
right.
something like that.
Yeah, because I think to look at the whole town, just to put in perspective, you mentioned 2.6, 2.8 million kilowatt hours for the town of Camden itself, our operations. This town in total, residents, commercials, probably more in the level, probably 9 to 10 million, 9 to 10 megawatts of power of total.
Right.
So just to put in perspective, the town is a big piece, but I'm feeding that thought that we need to think about the rest of the world and how to approach that. That's a little more complicated equation, but that's the order of magnitude you're dealing with.
To take it to a step further, would it be, if we were to look at all of the electrical needs for the entire town, not just the municipality, but the entire town, would it be cheaper to go through the solar process and generate all the electricity for the town, and then have people be a part of that and save on their taxes? Because we're providing the electricity for them. It just,
Save on the taxes?
There's so much, somewhere we can go, but I want to make sure we're looking beyond just what we need today.
Right.
Yeah, that's,
Because one of the things, there was a new legislation passed that is exempting solar from property taxes.
right.
Unless you're generating power for that location and another facility.
In your spreadsheet here, just to summarize again, it was about a 2.8 million size facility in total, if you did the whole nut. It has a 7-year buyout, seventh year buyout, I think, on the model. It's a total 3.6 million to start. Somebody has to spend 3.6 to build it. And the buyout per year, 50%, is about 1.8 million. And with that, in summary again, the break-even point would be the 13th or 14th year, somewhere around there.
13 years.
That's
yeah.
what I thought. You also extended the panels out 30 years. Experience in Europe has not been 30 years.
Right, they're not that long?
No,
Yeah.
25.
Because
I
25.
mean, it's a detail, by the way, it's a detail, but
Right.
you're still, financially, it's not going to dramatically change to make that point because of experience of others. This is lots of.
It's a performance warranty, the 25-year
Right.
warranty. And
Right.
and you have like a 0.5% degradation a year
Yeah,
on solar
right,
panels.
right. They don't, yeah, but, well, plus you have the factor of weather.
Right.
That's natural. I think Maine is probably 80%, I'm guessing, effectiveness for a
Yeah,
year.
pretty
About 80
much. And the
80%.
modeling I use from the National Renewable Energy Lab, it's called PV Watts, and it takes into consideration your climate based on historical data. So if I run that model, I identify the location where it's going to be, and it uses that data for the amount of irradiance and cloud cover. And by the way, we're as good as Houston, Texas, would you believe?
I believe it. Now, to that end, when you're generating that much power from solar, it's not 100% guaranteed. What have other jurisdictions done to make sure that if they have critical needs, public safety and the like, that they don't lose power?
Well, if everybody still would be connected to the grid, okay?
Right.
And
What you pay.
right, well, the way it works dynamically is that, you're generating power in the daytime, using it in real time.
Right.
Exporting what is excess to the grid, and the grid, you can view it as a big battery.
You got it.
It's a good way to look at it.
Right.
And so they're storing this power for your future use, which is every night. You have to bring some power in from the grid. And then during the winter, you have
Right.
longer periods.
Right.
And so when you get into a situation where, to say that if I have an emergency and our grid goes down, if the grid goes down, the solar systems have to go down. Any solar system connected to the grid must disconnect when the grid goes down.
Right.
If you don't want a system to do that, then you're getting into
It's a whole different ballgame.
a whole different technology with
Yeah.
batteries and
Right.
that type of thing.
And just last question, I want to ask about a detail you mentioned that I didn't quite get. You said if we did a mega facility for 10 million kilowatts someplace, 10 megawatts, we still pay distribution charges to CMP, correct? You can't get to the grid. They're not going to let you do that for free.
Well, the distribution charges would be, all the accounts have a connection
Right.
fee.
Right.
Now, the rulemaking for all the new legislation is still ongoing.
Oh.
For LD 1711.
Yeah.
I saw Sundog do a presentation where they are going to deliberately oversize the system. So what they do to recover that 25% that you're not getting is they make the system big enough to do that. But at the same time, they're giving away supply costs.
I see.
Because they're providing more supply to the grid than they're ever going to take back within
I
a
see.
year.
They're
So
making-
they'll lose those credits.
They're making a bigger battery.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. And then we don't know politically how it's going to change as far as the rules go, as
Right.
far as us being able to get better compensation.
In summary, just to your credit, this report gives all kinds of great stuff to chew on, gives us all kinds of great options to evaluate, and the data is here to do it. That's what the most important thing. I think you did a great job, Rich,
Thank
on
you.
that. Oh, of course you can. Of course you can.
What is the proper way to dispose of and/or recycle a solar panel?
Call a solar panel. I'm still looking into that. I have 2 damaged panels in my garage, and I've been meaning to find out where I can recycle them.
Well, the issue.
I've Googled it quite a bit. I mean, I expected it was an easier question to answer, but
It's not.
is the state of affairs as bad as people claim that it is? It sort of, that's shocking to me that somebody in your field wouldn't like, have we just not had enough systems age out? And
That's part of it.
what do people do? I mean,
Well, this
we'll
is
have
a
those provisions.
excellent question, because this is a lot.
Don't bring them to Microsoft Waste. That's what-
We can't. We all know there's cadmium, lithium in these panels, and right now, the countries ahead of us are Germany and France, 2 minimum, and they're gone through a federal millions of dollars study as to what to do and how to recycle and how to extract the cadmium, lithium. They're farther ahead than us. I'm hoping, they're way farther ahead than us, because they have panels stacked up, waiting to go somewhere, and they're in storage right now. And they don't know where to dispose of these things. This is an issue with solar. Solar is ranked, I believe, on renewable from an overall evaluation of the top 10 renewables. It's like 8 on the list because of this reason. So it's not the all-knowing blessing versus number 1 or 2 or 3, which are, we don't want to get into debate on those, but that are from an overall environmental perspective, at this moment, more environmentally sustainable.
They have the same issue with lithium batteries, and
Yes.
a lot of utilities are putting in large battery banks, and there's a lithium technology, and then there's a flow technology. So, for example, let's say a mirror is looking at millions of dollars to upgrade their line in Mount Desert Island. Because even now, well, a couple of years ago when I met with them, they're getting close to the line capacity in the summer when the hotels are running air conditioning. And so they were looking to alternatives to upgrading that line all the way from Ellsworth. So as a result, they're looking in battery technology. At their Hamden facility, they've installed pilot systems for this type of thing. But, that's going to be another issue, will be lithium batteries. And how do
You
you,
can take those to the transfer, there is a recycling program for that. Take those to the transfer station, but I actually don't know what happens to them after that.
I don't either. Well, I just know that from experience that there are countries that are ahead of us. And that's actually a good news thing. It's not a bad news thing, because they are trying to figure out what the process would be to separate glass, lithium, and cadmium.
I know, but it's totally unacceptable to be mass producing something that we have no current plan for.
Totally agree. That's why it's number 8 on the list of renewables.
Just like not learning from our mistakes of the past
and
situation.
another interesting fact is that the amount of carbon it takes to build a solar panel, you have to operate the solar panel for 6 to 7 years before you've offset the carbon it took to build it.
And what about when you cut down a ton of trees for all of this? What is your position on that? Like how many, is it?
Oh, for the field, for the site.
Yeah, I've seen the data, it's like one tree, it ends up mathematically working out that it's better to cut the tree and have the solar panel. But when you start adding that to the carbon footprint of the actual
Well, then you're
solar,
looking at land use issues,
well, yeah. And we have,
agricultural land that's good for developing, land that's already sequestering carbon. You know, I mean, the ideal sites are brownfield sites, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a limit in how many of those there are.
You're not getting my field.
There you go, Superfund's even better.
Yeah, and sites that don't have a significant forest.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, all those issues are going to be staring, you know, our civilization in the face as we try to get off fossil fuels. All of those things are going to have to be dealt with.
Agreed.
So
Excellent question.
keep your eye out for brownfield sites, everyone. We have one that we know and love, but
So I'd say that, you know, there's
Well,
quite a few policy decisions
Oh, yeah.
that you still all need to
Oh, yeah.
make for moving forward.
Oh, yeah.
I think, you know, Rich, he's going to be a great resource moving forward. I would highly recommend that, you know, once you've made some decisions around
Direction.
policy and moving forward, that Rich is involved in
Oh, I agree.
drafting the
I'd agree.
RFP and also reviewing the PPAs that come back as a result.
Yeah, we don't want to have
I
another,
think we might want him back too after we've had a chance to digest
sure.
this a little bit more. We might have better
Sure.
questions, but we should probably,
yeah,
don't
we
you
don't
think
want
we
to
should let Anita?
we don't want to wind up with another 44,000 of kilowatt hours that we are losing credit for it as we speak at Sagamore Farm.
Right.
It's just,
Well, that all got resolved.
not to my knowledge.
Yeah, really?
I looked at August 15th data and we're still losing at that point. So we're rechecking whether the meter thing has been
Because
changed. or
I
not.
believe the intention was to reallocate to
The
the.
meters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to different meters.
All I can tell you is through August 15th, meter readings, we're still losing.
Right, right.
So we haven't,
Those
CMP.
9 accounts that were picked
We
weren't big enough.
may need some help here, Rich, is what I'm saying. So, but thank you. That's a wonderful report. Anita, did you have a question?
I put you on there, and still.
Why weren't they big enough?
Huh?
Why weren't they big enough that counts?
Don't get me started.
Do we not have, do we have too many small ones and not?
Yes, we have, we
So
have
many
9,
small ones.
we have 9 meters, and some of those meters aren't using what somebody projected they would be using. And every month, we're losing, we've already lost credits.
Fort Bob's thinking.
2,000, no, 2,000, only 2,000, it's not huge, by the way, 2,000 kilowatts, that's, 5 homes. But per month, we're losing that, we can't get those credits anymore, they're gone.
Where do they go?
Oh,
Are
now
there
you-
recs? Is Revision selling
Revision
our
selling-
recs to somebody?
Yes, of course. That's
So
what-
it's still doing- it's still- no,
no,
they're not.
No, actually, what's happening is we're paying for the full generation by kilowatt hour, but we're not getting credit from CMP for use. So we are paying for somebody else's kilowatt hours.
But it's still,
It's being dumped in the grid.
We're just putting solar power out there for free for someone
Correct.
else.
Free
but
for
from an
someone.
environmental perspective,
That's not a
it's
biggie.
making solar really attractive. So-
There you go.
Right. In the 12 months I audited, you lost over 60,000 kilowatt hours.
That's what I calculated.
Because they weren't credited properly.
And the entire system is 150,000 per year. Nita?
Hi, Anita Bercia Scott. I'm the chair of the Energy and Sustainability Committee here in Camden. I would like, on behalf of the committee as well as the town, we'd like to thank you, Richard, for your work and the select board as well for having the wisdom to get us consultant to help sort out this question and this problem. So I just wanted to get that out there first. In 2014, the Watershed School created an inventory, which might have been the first inventory of the annual kilowatt hour usage of the town of Camden. They came up with a number of, using the electric accounts of 2.047 million
0.1
kilowatt hours.
approximately.
And that was looking at 2014 accounts. Then, as a result of our signing on to the Covenant of Mayors, one of the first steps for our job in fulfilling the Covenant of Mayors promise is to inventory our energy use across the board, but including electricity. So they did it again using the 2018 numbers, and that came up as 1.915 million. So it went from 2.047 to 1.915 between 2014 and 18. Now we're looking at 2018-19 numbers, and we have 2.7 which is significantly more than 1.9 million kilowatt hours. So I would request one of the things that the town should do in this follow-up work is to have perhaps someone in the town office, someone who can look at the spreadsheets and look at the accounts and try to truth.
I would say that's what Rich did.
Exactly.
Right, I used.
Well, where did that come, like, where was the increase?
So can you determine where we lost
Yeah, Anita, the first.
almost a million?
The spreadsheet clearly defines every meter that the town has in the kilowatt usage. Now, that should be compared with what the school used meter by meter. I got a
Right.
sneaking suspicion they've missed some meters.
So
Why
who
are we-
would do that? And also the meters that were identified, many of them were designated as street names. So it's just a little hard to understand what they were measuring. So I'm just wondering if
You're
there's a
saying
way
that
that we
didn't-
can figure out, are we looking at apples and oranges?
Exactly.
Are we looking at apples and apples? That's a significant difference, almost a million.
That was my question
kilowatt hours.
to Rich, but I can understand that
I
confusion.
don't mean to doubt his
No, no,
work,
no,
and
no.
it might be the most accurate.
And the school
And
either.
certainly,
No, I understand.
I certainly
Oh,
wouldn't.
the school was included in this?
No. The school.
Why are you bringing up the school then?
Because she just did. She said
she's-
the watershed school came up with numbers at 2.01.
Now,
and-
granted, these are
and
high schoolers
1.9,
versus a
and
professional.
that's why
I
we came
saw
up
that
2.6.
report. In fact, it was very helpful, because what I received for accounts had a number missing, and that school report identified the missing accounts I didn't have. So I was able to get the bills for those and make a more complete report from, but they also had accounts that existed missing on their report as well.
Right, I'm sure, I have no doubt that this is an incredibly hard thing
Oh, yeah.
to track down.
They had one mistake in their spreadsheet where the street light bill of 40,000, they had it as 400,000 in their, in that spreadsheet.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I had to kind of, the best way for me to do that was identify what the account numbers were and then go get my own data from
Thank you.
Jody, and that's what I did.
That's, I can recognize what a challenge
I
that
think your
would be.
question is very valid, and I think one of the first steps, and it's only a first step, is have the school compare just the data, and see if they can identify anything that's different. Then we can go back and ask Richard whatever, any questions. But I think, honestly, I did see the list, and I didn't see the detailed list from the school, but I'm sure it's pretty accurate. But I think that we need to take, I just have, the veracity of what he generated is pretty damn good.
Can I make a suggestion?
course.
He's already identified the meters that the school missed. If you could share those.
Well, they can
with-
just read the report.
They can read the
Maybe
report.
with Anita.
Give the report to
They can read the
Janet
report.
and,
Yeah, so that way they can look and
Yes,
see what they missed.
absolutely,
Because it
Mark.
looks like he's already identified
Yes.
what he's missed.
But to Anita's point, and that's what point I was trying to make earlier, it's a significant difference.
It's very difficult.
And we don't think it's because the town used a
So-
lot more electricity.
No.
It's not like the snowball or.
So we're still, I have a number of points. Do you mind if I just continue to bring them up and questions that relate to this project?
Well, how many do you have?
Pardon?
A couple. Go- Start into it.
You could ask them all and then the
Why don't you-
answer could
Why don't you
come.
ask them all, please? Just ask all your questions,
Oh,
please. Just go through the
Sure.
list. Good
Who's
idea,
taking
Jim.
notes?
Allison, you're so good.
So we're still dealing with CMP. Bottom line is it's going back on the grid, and CMP, or equivalent thereof, is dealing with. So we're still dealing with the
Yes.
bureaucracy
Yes.
of trying to get credits and trying to identify meters
Yes.
and have them match. And I know my family, we have solar panels, and we're sharing our overproduction with our kids in Gorham.
Sure.
And, which is great, except it's been a bugbear to try and sort out this one account with CMP. How are we going to deal with the overproduction that is presently planned, or even to deal, I mean,
We've already had a discussion with Jody about this, and the town is focusing on this differential at Sagamore Farm, I presume you're talking
I'm
about?
not talking about that. I'm talking about our future plan of 2.8
Right.
million
Okay,
kilowatt hours.
I don't have an answer
Like,
to
is the
that.
hassle, it's almost like, do we have to work
It
in
is.
something?
It is.
That's,
Is it even possible?
So what, I mean, in particular, I really love the idea of, if we overproduce, crediting it towards the people who need it, help, but how in the world will we do
I
that?
think you're asking the question way too early.
Okay.
I think you're way ahead of
Yeah.
where we are for this evening.
Yeah, is there anything related to the reports you have questions on?
Well, you're going to be writing up an RFP, so would there
No, we're
be an
not going to do
opportunity?
that yet.
No. We're nowhere near ready to do that. I see clearly 3 or 4 wonderful options that we can chew on. That's what we have to do next in either. And certainly, we'll look for your input on
And
that.
the other thing I'd like you to sort of put in your hat and think
Yep.
about along with all of this is
Yep.
we're talking about rooftop solar, which is great. We're talking about the possibility of coordinating with the middle school. I think it would be good to be thinking about making one location a potential for an emergency shelter for our citizens, where the power that is produced by the solar panels would actually go to batteries at that place. And the potential for that would be at the middle school.
Okay.
So like the emergency, so our emergency services is down by the river. It's probably not the best place to have an emergency shelter for citizens in, a bad situation.
Sure.
But it's something I'd like you to consider, is
Okay.
whether we could start thinking about the middle school as an emergency shelter, having solar panels, maybe we're coordinating with the school, battery banks
It's great news. Thank
in
you.
the situation like that, because we're talking about it all going back to.
And thank you and the Energy Committee for all your work.
Can we,
Thank you and the Energy Committee for all your work.
can we give the Energy Committee, or task them with, over the next month, or even probably the next month, I would say, or anybody on the Energy Committee that wants to, or however Anita sees fit, just if they have, reviewing the report and submitting any comments or questions, just to make sure we,
Well, yes, but.
so that there's a format for,
There shouldn't be 7 people sending in 7 requests.
No,
for
no, no, no,
information.
no, all through
If
an-
Anita wants to coordinate as chair.
I was just saying however she wants to do it, like.
Yeah, well, I suggest as chair, she would bring together any questions on the report and provide them to the town. Sure. Sure.
Questions or comments, or, just to make sure,
Or your recommendations or any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
make sure everybody reads it. I know I personally have not read all of this
Okay,
yet,
all
but we
the
all
ins-
should make sure we do it, and
All the Energy Committee has copies of it.
Specifically, would you like me to address those comments to?
to Audra.
Somebody in Rockland, no. No, to Audra, please send them to her.
Which busy person?
Oh,
You can-
Jeremy's good too.
you can
I mean,
always do both.
You should call,
You can always send it to both of us, we'll both read it.
no, but I want to be included on it too, but hopefully we can trust. Okay.
Yes, and
Right.
CC me as well.
Rich,
please.
anything else that you want
The
to?
only other thing I wanted to mention is that there was a piece of legislation to create a bond for municipalities.
Yes.
That didn't get addressed by the legislature and
Yes.
has supposedly been carried over to the next session.
Right.
And that would be able to provide grants to municipalities
Yep.
to install solar systems, how that would work and how competitive it is and how they would rate one municipality over another and how much they
Sure.
get. All that would have to be
Sure.
worked out. I know the USDA,
Investor?
pardon?
Would that be in lieu of an investor?
Yeah, well, once I saw that, I go, well, the PPA agreement, how is that going to work?
Yeah, it's like a tax credit. How does that work for the investor? I
And-
don't know.
But this is addressing municipalities, which would, are all, it's in their benefit to go for a PPA agreement, so that would have to be worked out.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
We gotta work out how we're gonna dispose of this stuff, but.
thank you. I don't mind if he doesn't mind.
One thing I've always been curious about is why do we see the solar companies like Revisions of this world going to municipalities to do a PPA? And you don't see them or read about them going to
Corporate America.
corporate America and businesses in Maine to try to get them to do a PPA on their property. Why is it that, or why do you think they're just hitting the municipal governments? Because it seems like every little town is doing a panel.
well, it's because of the tax law. If you're a private business, you got that 26% federal tax credit the first year.
So it's really about building their
Yeah,
business
right.
up.
So for a private business to enter in a PPA agreement, they probably would be more expensive.
Well,
Definitely would be more
in
expensive.
corporate America has another factor in accounting called depreciation. And that's a hellish tax advantage in addition to the tax credit up front.
Right, so it's really all about taxes.
Yep.
The return on investment looks awfully tempting, but it turns out only people with passive income may be PPA investors. Only people who
You can't have,
sit in their office and collect rent and do nothing
yep,
for work are allowed to invest.
that's correct. You can only deduct from passive income, passive investment. That's accounting rules.
Can you,
Oh, that gets really complicated, accounting.
Opportunities for people in the town, and
Right.
they'd love to have 400% ROI.
Right.
Well, and that's just another thought. I mean, can the town create some sort of development corporation to create
A
an
tax-paying,
entity to do
a
PPAs?
tax-paying corporation,
I'm just,
right? All right.
Well, something like that would be the creation of an LLC.
Okay, and that's-
To create a group of investors, you really have to know there's a lot of things that have to be covered in that
Yeah, some of them are
requires a
legal.
good attorney, because you have the relationships of the members, how they get their tax credits processed.
Yes.
Oh, there's
Yeah,
a lot of stuff in there that.
It's a huge list of accounting/illegal issues. Anyway, Rich, it's been a great report. You've given us so
Thank you
much
for
to deal with.
having
And
me.
thank you also for being flexible when we rescheduled you coming here. I appreciate that
Oh,
very
sure,
much.
sure.
Thank you.
And, you know, if you move on to a request for proposal, I'd be happy to
We
help with some
we
of
have
that
your
stuff.
number.
Okay.
Thank you, Rich.
we're going to need him before that,
I
actually.
think so, too.
Yeah. we
Way
need-
before that, Rich, way before that. And onward and upward to talk about our discussion presentation of the work plan for the Parks and Rec Committee. Mr. Ray. Thanks
Thank you
again,
for
Rich.
this opportunity to come here and update you on the activities of our Parks and Rec Committee. Can you hear
Introduce
me?
yourself, please.
I'm sorry?
Introduce
I
yourself.
will. I was going.
Oh.
Okay. I'm Ray Andreessen. I'm chairman of the committee, and I'd like to acknowledge the other members of the committee. Mark Haskell, who you've already heard from, Sarah Ruth Lindquist, Brian Robinson, Casey Leonard, Tom Resick, and for this past year, John Scholes. They're all members of the committee. And as you know, we serve as sort of an advisory committee to the to the Parks and Rec Department, and work closely with Beth and Holly on just about everything we do, and they attend just about every one of our meetings. What I'd like to do tonight is describe 4 projects that we've worked on this past year, have been working on this past year, and then discuss our priority list for what we look at as major capital expenditures for the Parks and Rec Department going on in the future. And then give you some suggested additions to our work plan for next year. First thing is park rec signage. This is something that we have, and I see Allison scrolling through, she'll probably come up with a picture there, but this is something that we have worked on for several years, or discussed for several years, and the issue is that there's no consistent signage throughout the town of identifying the parks. No clear signage, and in some cases, no signage at all. It doesn't even exist on a couple of parks. And Camden has 20-plus parks and outdoor sites that the Parks and Rec Department manages, and we should be proud of it and really have some really nice signs. And what Holly and Beth came up with as far as design, and you can see it up there on the screen, and our committee approved this, is what will eventually, I think, be a very wonderful sign and look to the parks in the town. Includes the town logo up in the left-hand corner, identifies it as part of the property of the town of Camden, the name of the park or whatever, overlook or whatever it would be, the Parks and Rec logo, and then the panels that show their international symbols that show the type of activities that are suitable at that location. This, I believe, a budget of about $3,000 has already been appropriated to implement this, and it'll be something that'll be ongoing. They're not going to appear on every location next Monday. But I think one of the first locations will probably be Seabright Park, where someone a couple of years ago stole the sign, and we have not been able to replace it. It's disappeared. Nobody knows where it went.
Hold on, which budget line is this coming out of?
Signage,
Parks and Recs.
Parks and Rec,
The
yeah,
budget has,
$3,000 if, wow.
as a start, yeah.
wow, it's not enough.
No, it's not,
That's
that's,
not
no,
enough?
no.
I
This
think there are a lot of
this
other
is-
Parks and Rec
This is
problems
going
that
to
could
probably be a continuing budget line going forward.
Discussion for next year.
Right.
What's our, sorry.
Go ahead. You can-
No, I was just thinking, like, what's our signage budget for the whole town?
I have no idea.
I think that the majority of that's in the public works, oh, sorry, roads and highways. And that's, a lot of that is like
Road signs.
construction, yeah.
I just didn't realize there was such a, is that an every year budget item for $3,000 for Parks and Rec signage?
No, no, it's not.
We budgeted last year and we didn't get to making the signs, so we carried that forward and we're hoping to do it
Right.
a large order.
Right?
Yeah.
Can I say one thing about the signs? The downtown design team for a number of years has been looking into trying to look at all the signage of the town. So they match and, excess signs are sort of limited stuff. I'm going to recommend that somebody from that committee contact your committee, just so
Sure.
one hand knows what the other hand is doing, so, because I've
Right.
seen that before where multiple committees are all working on
Yeah.
signs and we'd have a
Who's
correlation.
in
I'll ask
lead of
Deb-
that?
I don't know, I'll ask Deb Dodge is the chairperson.
Okay, fine.
But it's really a Beth. Should it all go through, I mean, are we too far down I don't want to stop their progress by,
I just want people to be in touch.
We have not produced any signs yet.
oh, great, okay.
It's just good for people to be in touch so that,
I know, sometimes this can really lead to nothing happening though, because they want to actually eliminate a lot of, a lot of signs.
All right, fine. The second item that we've worked on this past year, and you've already heard something earlier about it this morning, is reservation fees or usage fees at the Snowball on the sports field. Again, this has been like signs, this has been a topic that we have worked on for quite a while. We came to the select board several years ago with a proposal, and it wasn't accepted. But the issue here really is that there are some groups that reserve the sports field for their exclusive use at certain times and certain days.
Right.
And basically have never been charged
Right.
for that usage. And what we are proposing, it was not a unanimous decision, as you heard earlier, but what we are proposing is to start with a reservation fee of $100 for youth leagues to reserve the fields for how many days they need, and a $300 fee for adult leagues. This would be, we are proposing and hope that this will have to come to the select board, I'm sure, for approval later on, and we hope to implement this next year. And we did meet with representatives from the softball, youth football, and lacrosse leagues, and it seemed to be okay with them.
All right, let's.
Wow, you guys took
let's
it-
stay
you
on the
did
work
that.
plan.
That's-
Ideas, the action for the fees will come
This
later.
is great.
I know it's great, but the fact, this action has to come to the select board.
Yeah, right,
I
exactly.
think
No,
we
was-
should, I think
there's
it's
going
great.
to be no
I think we
proposal
already
coming up here.
I think we already voted on that at some point, that concept of it, or,
Just-
Well,
At the fee schedule in last January, you
Yes.
guys talked about it, but we didn't say,
Right.
we didn't say what it was, we just said.
right, it was
We
a
didn't approve it.
con,
Yeah.
Come up with a fee order in
Right.
January.
right.
So the
Great, this is-
January-ish will come up with a recommendation on these fees?
I think, we'll work with Beth and as far as the
So
time
we
to
Get it into the cycle.
get it into the select board in time for,
Right.
and those reservations come in from the leagues when they want the fields
Spring.
in the spring.
For next spring.
Yeah,
okay.
right. And this would also be extended to any other organization or youth or adult league that wants to reserve that area for their exclusive use for a certain period of time.
Right.
The third project that we've worked on, discussed a couple of things, involve Lake Beach. And I think the select board is pretty aware of the new stone steps. Our committee had nothing to do with the stone steps, new stone steps going down to the beach. But two other improvements that we were involved with. First, we helped facilitate a facilities upgrade. Sarah Ruth Lindquist, who's a member of our committee, is also a member of an adjunct group of the West Bay Rotary, and she came to one of our meetings with a proposal, or what can we do around the parks and rec as a group, as a service project. And what we determined and what they went ahead with was painting and fixing up part of the bathroom facility there at Lake Beach. Something that was in need. It relieved the department of doing the work and paying for the work. Did a very nice job. I think everybody can appreciate that. The second thing with Lake Beach is in our usual responsibilities of going around and looking at the different facilities, trying to help Beth and her crew as to, hey, here's something that needs to be done, et cetera. Discussion evolved on the small swing set at Lake Beach. And I don't know if Beth has updated the board on what the situation was, but of the four seats, two of them were gone. They were no longer usable. And the actual metal bars that hold up the swing set were in such poor condition, you couldn't fix them. So now Beth is in the process, I don't think it's arrived yet, but I've ordered a new swing set. You can see the picture
The
up there.
unsolvable problem.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
New swing set, because, and Beth, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but because of ADA restrictions and everything like that, it's a new set, so it has to have your sawdust and, or chips and everything around it. I'll try to be a little more careful of this. It needs to have a safe landing area around it. Sure. But there are going to be two of the, and I forget what you call the type of seats for bucket seats, and then two of your regular slat seats.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So this will be, I think Beth is hoping that it might happen this fall, but it definitely will happen by springtime for next year. And this will be, this is the only swing set on public property in the town of Camden, and the town-owned property, and it's really the only children's playground equipment.
This is such a huge milestone, because this has been talked about for, and just the speculation about why we can't have swings, and then policy, and it just spread to all the parks. So thank you so much. This is
It's good to feel
great.
like we've done something. All right. The fourth project that we've been working on, and Jeff Stroud, who's in the audience here, came to one of our meetings, I think at Beth's suggestion, with an idea of trying disc golf out at the Snow Bowl. And Jeff is really the one who's promoted this. He's got us all enthused about it. And we are now going and having a test course, if you will. I think it's got a very imaginative name, Ragged Chains, that he put in there. But Jeff has done all the work under the direction and, I won't say guidance, but under the approval of Beth as to putting in 9 temporary holes. And I'm going to say temporary because this is not a fixed installation at this point. But 9 temporary holes, and you can see what, it was a lesson for me too, as to what disc golf is.
Yeah.
But you basically take a Frisbee type of
Get in the hole.
golf, and you throw it across to the next hole, and you have this chain bucket, hits the chains and goes in, just like a hole-in-one, only.
That sounds like so much fun.
And there are 9.
I think
right,
it sounds
Jeff,
great.
9
That's so much better than regular
9 holes
golf.
that are put
yeah,
in
right.
across the mountain. The pole you see there and the chains are removable for the ski season.
That's a good idea.
And It sits into a concrete platform that'll obviously be covered over by,
Not right now.
not right now, but that's the eventual plan or the best way to do it. And this can be extended into an 18-hole course all across the mountain, or 9. The reports are that there are, and I think Jeff has talked it up a lot, there have been children, young families, older adults out there trying their hand at this already. And we really haven't publicized, I mean, Jeff has, but we really haven't publicized it that much.
What's out there right now? Just
9
have
baskets.
9 out there now?
There are 9 baskets out there.
When did they go up?
They're up.
No, when did they go up?
We decided to put them up for the month of October, knowing that we were having chairlift rides and
Right.
people would see.
Because I did the chairlift ride, I didn't see them. Did they go up since, in the last week?
Actually, that's pretty good because they're hidden a little bit so
Yeah.
that you don't,
It's not so obvious.
Were they there when I did the chairlift? Wow,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Isn't that what a wonderful, opportunity we've been trying to use the snowball for more, have it be less of just an exclusive thing for only skiers.
Yeah.
What a perfect
Right.
example of something
And-
to do there.
Right, and the goal here is to, next year, look at, okay, how do we turn this into more of a outdoor activity? Being able to charge fees for it, how to set up, it's not going to be totally free.
Right.
Or it doesn't have to be, but
That's all in the works.
who's going to
Yep.
take care of it, because as far as staffing, et cetera, and everything. And I'm sure Jeff has some proposals that he would like to eventually make in the future.
We'll get,
Sorry, may I?
Sure, Jeff.
well, I just want to
Yeah.
talk.
Oh, sorry, I'll let you
What-
decide.
I want to make sure we're discussing the work plan here.
Yeah.
and not details of what's going to be proposed later. Now, if you want to add a brief statement, please come up and do it.
Well,
Sure, Jeff. Come on
it's
up.
not just the
Identify
work
yourself
plan, a
here.
little bit is like background. How can we know whether to support it on a future work plan if we don't know a little bit about the
Go
vision?
ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, I feel a little out of place.
No.
That is my child,
You need to introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, my name's Jeff Strout. I'm the one who came up with the idea of ragged chains. The snowball was very generous in the Parks and Recreation Department. They said, go ahead and put up a couple of baskets. I said, okay, I'll put 9 baskets up. As I started building the course, I put 3 baskets up. All of a sudden, I had people coming from all over the county, sorry, my bad, county. I've had people from Lewiston, Auburn area, Bangor and Brewer area, and all in between, Augusta, Waldoboro, Washington, Warren. People are coming to this course, they're playing this course, and it's only 9 holes. I don't have tee pads to say. I don't have professional baskets put in. They're 12-chain baskets instead of 24-chain baskets. People are coming, they're playing. I think it's a wonderful thing. And if I can do a professional, if the town and the mountain lets me, a professional 18-hole course with 24-chain baskets, concrete tee pads, and of course, it's all going to be removable for the ski season, so it's not going to hurt that whatsoever. That I think we can make a lot of money with this, and why not?
Ooh.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank
My bad.
you, Jeff. Thank you.
Guys, thanks for your energy.
Thank you. No, so those are 4 of the projects on our work plan that we've been working on this past year and
Ongoing.
made some progress on.
Ongoing activities.
Ongoing, yes, yeah. Now, what I mentioned about priorities, we looked at a list of what we think are going to be some, or could be, some major capital expenditures, and these are really non-skiing expenditures, capital expenditures. And the first one, and we ranked them as a group, and the first one is the Snowball Access Road, and I realize that some money has already been appropriated for the culvert issue there. The feeling among members of the committee was that when that culvert is repaired, it would make sense to actually pave the road all the way in to part of the parking lot at the Snowball. Sometimes it becomes almost impassable. And I think the other issue is with the culvert, I think the real problem is if that really collapses and you can't drive into the Snowball during the ski season, the town has got a financial problem. I think,
That's already, that's going to happen. That doesn't need to call.
is it going to happen this year?
It was supposed
I
to.
don't know.
I will say it likely won't happen this construction season, but I've talked to Dave St. Laurent, and I think we got a plan to make sure we're safe for this season.
Okay.
But what about the fish that need to get through the,
Yeah.
why aren't we doing it? What happened?
Well, we just got finalized, I mean, the grant just came in a few weeks ago formally,
There's permitting.
and there's still permitting involved
Okay.
that they're working through the
That's- yeah,
process.
Okay, all right, okay. But it's just, I mean, from our perspective, it was just a discussion on what we feel were some of the major priorities. This is beyond our scope, and it goes to the select board as to where you're going to put money or try to put money.
that's a nice logical one.
Question I get to here is when you get to another sheet, you have your priorities for the work plan of the committee. Is the Snowball Access Road, does your suggesting the committee work on that activity?
I think it's another one that could be added to it, yes.
Is that what the select board wants to?
I don't know. That's something for discussion, I think, between Audra and me as chairman of the committee in the future, as far as what goes on to and then presented to the select board.
I
as
think he's
to
kind
what
of
we should
saying
be
it's a
working on.
priority. If it needs help from the committee, if that is they believe it's something that needs to be moved forward, if it needs
We
more
don't have-
help.
Yeah, the other thing that I will say, we do not have any engineering capabilities on our committee, okay? So,
I mean, and this is, this is good input
Right.
for me when I'm, I'm working
Well,
with Beth
right.
and the other department heads to do the capital plan,
Right,
to know
right.
that
Yeah.
the committee
Right.
has identified
right.
these as
And-
priorities.
Yeah, and what we've, going down the list, Barrett's Cove, Barrett's Cove and Shorttail Park, we've talked about in the past. There were some, Asa Pete's gave some very improvement suggestions or whatever on the sketches, and they were in there. Those two we have talked about in the past. We have looked at what needs, some of the things that need to be done there. I would say the committee ranked Barrett's Cove ahead of Shorttail Park, mainly because of usage. I mean, Barrett's Cove is much more widely used than Shorttail. And both of them are in-town swimming areas, and Barrett's Cove has much more room. We'd like to add some room to Shorttail Park. But the issue at Barrett's Cove is really the parking lot access, the usage of the place, and runoff from that parking lot at times. That's going to become more and more of an issue, either in gasoline, oil, and stuff like that getting into the lake, but even just runoff of water sloping down to the beach area and washing things out. This is going to be a big one for the town to consider. We also would want, there's one stretch where, in the parking lot right now, where there's sort of an opening, and we really feel that a barrier should be put there, because during the winter, people drive through that, cross the beach area and out onto the lake, dragging their ice houses, et cetera, and then in the springtime, bringing them back across. And it really has created some problems with the beach area.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
That's one. Obviously, Barrett's Cove can always use some more picnic tables and some other additional help, but the real structural thing is the parking lot and the barrier, and how do you prevent the runoff to there. With short-tail runoff and erosion especially at the beach area, is really becoming more and more of an issue. The town is losing its area where young kids, and that's really where you'll find a lot of young kids swimming, where the young kids can go into the water, and that entrance, if you will call it, is becoming more washed out, down, and it's not an easy entrance. There could be a much easier way built into going into the
And that's
water.
because of I think a lot of that's tied in with the water levels that we're maintaining, and the insistence on it being like not so normal, where a normal river fluctuates over a course of time, a normal river, a normal lake, and we're
Right.
constantly pushing it to the limit in terms of there's all the sediment that washes down, and that's what a lot of the shirt tail bank is made of, and then we're keeping the water level so high that every time we have a storm too, it's just like, there's nothing. That's, yeah.
But there are ways, I believe, that can
Vegetating
be
it.
stabilized,
Yeah.
that can be improved. So it's,
Yeah.
it's a wonderful little park. It is. It's a really wonderful little park. The other issues with shirt tail are runoff from 105 coming down, Washington Street coming down.
Down the road.
The road that goes in there is always going to get a water course through it. And what the committee has looked at in the past and recently is an idea of enlarging the green space next to the river and moving the parking lot back up the hillside a little bit.
Yep.
Obviously, we're talking about, this is a big engineering job to do that, but there's room there to do it.
There is.
And we could create a little bit of a buffer between the cars and where people are on picnic tables or with their kids on a blanket or whatever, but we have more space there too.
I
great
think
idea.
this especially becomes important as we're working on the sidewalk that goes
Yes.
to Shirt Tail.
Right.
Do we have a timeline on that yet?
Bill and I are going to start working with property owners on the takings that we need to do.
The takings.
And one of the things, we started talking about shirt tail and making improvements there a couple of years ago when the proposal went through as far as getting money for the sidewalk. And okay, people might be biking up there and be more accessible for a lot of people. We should improve the entrance and everything. And the anticipation we might get more cars there, let's add to the parking lot. It's, another wonderful little park, and it's used a lot during the summer.
And
It
we
really
also
is.
own a lot more land that's not
The
being,
land on the other side, and
a
that's,
little wet, but
it's,
sometimes.
it's wet, it's it's almost like a water buffer, or it soaks up a lot of water there. The one additional thing that we have looked at as a possibility there, as it stands right now at Shirt Tail, you want to go in swimming, you go in this area. If you want to put in your kayak or canoe, you go in the same area. And there is the possibility of using some of that side area we'd have to put in a wooden walkway there to be able to have an area where people could launch their boats, launch their canoes, their kayaks, and even, somebody could even fish from that area.
Sure.
And it's separate that from the swimming area. The other one, Maiden Cliff, is something that needs to be done, the trail there, the trail at Maiden Cliff, there are some bridges that are totally shot. Some part of the pathway has to be rerouted. It's not going to be an expense like some of these other things, but it is possible that if the town winds up deciding to hire like a Maine Conservation Corps crew to do the work, that's like about $5,000 a week plus materials. So, but that's something that is a very popular hiking
it's
area
getting
for the
even more
town,
popular,
and we
seems
should
like.
improve the pathway up.
Yeah.
And it may be a grant opportunity, I don't know, as far as getting
Tour
trail
buses
work.
there. It's like free. Sometimes I go there, I'm like, all right, just another day. It's-
I'm amazed when I go drive by there on like a Sunday morning and, there's nobody going to church.
And the parking part is a little scary. It's like, I don't think it's safe today to get out of my car right there, so.
Yeah, yeah. The other two on there, the tennis courts, they need to be totally rebuilt. Mark?
I was going to say, Audra will tell you, tennis courts have been a major priority to me for 2-3 years. I've been asking her about it.
Yes.
I think they're an embarrassment. And I think it's not just the tennis courts, it's the whole chain link fence, the backstop for the baseball field is a disaster. Where you have to, people put boards along the bottom to keep the balls from rolling underneath. I'm there with my son quite a bit in the summer. And Audra mentioned there's a possibility of a grant for that.
Yes. So
For-
the Land and Water Conservation Fund originally helped build these tennis courts.
Right.
And They like to, invest money in facilities that they originally built in terms of maintenance and upkeep, so I think that's a good opportunity.
Right.
Okay.
How is a tennis court in a wetland, a land and water conservation activity?
And these,
A lot of interesting things. They funded
Maybe they
snowmaking.
can like
which is
re-engineer
also
it so it's
very
not so
environmental.
detrimental. But you're right. They funded the snowmaking too?
The snowmaking equipment, right, Beth?
What?
Twice.
yeah, yeah.
And they built the ball field. A lot of this happened in the 70s when they
Oh.
were really into recreation.
A different vision for
Right.
conservation.
And it's my understanding that those tennis courts are grandfathered in there. If you took them away, you couldn't build anything else there because of the location, so.
Right, we can only do
We
a
can
permit by
only
rule thing.
replace, yeah, we can only rebuild them. And I think the last numbers Beth had is on replacing the tennis courts. It looks like it's like $120,000. It's not
Yeah,
a cheap
it's an
endeavor.
upsetting number. I had somebody ask me about trying to start a fundraising campaign for it. And we were all enthusiastic talking about it, and he was like, I think I could raise the money, and I sent over the numbers, and he was like, yeah, I have to take a harder look at that.
Right, right. But it is still used. You go out there and you'll see some people, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say you've got the Wimbledon courts there, but, right. But again, it is the only tennis courts public tennis courts in the town of Camden.
Right.
So, and the last one we put on there was the Tannery Park Playground. I think for some of us on our committee, it's been a big issue for quite a few years as far as having a playground in town, but until the property is settled as far as what's going to happen with it, what can happen with it, or whatever, it's just something that, we shouldn't really,
Right.
it's like low on our priority list right now. Yeah.
And I would just add to that spending a lot of time, at Lake Beach, the more time I've spent at Lake Beach, the more I question the reason to put a bunch of playground equipment at the tannery. I mean, Lake Beach it's so similar to Walker Park and in Rockport, which is just, the treasured playground. And there's so many, all those natural playground ideas that came to us with the committee about the tannery, they just lend themselves so perfectly to Lake Beach because of the slope and because of, Lake Beach kind of has something for everybody. You've got the water and you've got, I really feel like we should be reinvesting in that rather than, the playground sprawl effect.
We will remember that and discuss that at our committee meetings too.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know if you've seen the natural playground up in Belfast, at the Belfast Park.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Of course, that's one of many different facilities they have right in that one location. Yeah. Finally, there are 6 items I have here that we'd like to add to our work list for next year, our work plan for next year.
Where is that?
You know what? Actually, it'd be on the third sheet of that. There's probably 4 or 5 of them there in green. And my color coding there was green are new things that we suggest adding. Red is things that or blue are things that we have made progress on, and red were things that are unfinished or continuing. But one thing that we are looking at, and this is really Beth's suggestion, brown-tailed moth, and how our committee can help her department scope out areas in the parks where we have infestations that her crews can come around and do, or whoever is going to be doing it, come around and help maybe eradicate some of the moths and some of the nests. This was really Beth's suggestion. Because we have, taken those steps, disc golf and any other types of new programs that come, I think are really things that our committee, Beth would like to have, I'm sure, like to have our committee vet them a little bit and see what's possible and help promote them if necessary, if suitable. Another one I put on there is the tubing hill, which is always a piece of, piece of discussion. And I think our committee, we have quite a few people who are.
Not enough action.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, I have too much discussion, not enough action.
Yeah.
I hear more about
Not
the
enough.
tubing hill from
I
my
do
wife
too.
than any other single thing in town. It's the one thing she cares about.
For her.
I hear a lot about the tubing.
It's an important issue that doesn't get enough attention.
Right, right. So, I mean, that's one thing. And in the past, in the bottom, well, I'll go to McGonagall Rowing first.
Yeah.
And that's something that Mark mentioned and everything.
Yep.
I'd like to have, I think we should have that as a discussion area or work plan for our committee to look at also. Originally, McGonagall Rowing came to the Parks and Rec Committee to see if they could use Barrett's Cove, et cetera, and we helped facilitate it in a way. And I know there are many issues with that, but I think our committee is a good location for some discussions there. And the other two are, I put down Park Rec budget and snowball budget. Not that Beth is the one who prepares the budget and everything, but I think as an advisory committee, if she can rely on us for some suggestions and feedback on things on a regular basis, we look at the budget and review it on some basis, on sometimes. And I think that's, an important function or could be an important function of our committee.
Right. And I think
Any
you
questions?
you segue.
Beth will speak up if she doesn't
Yeah,
like.
well, not Beth, no, it's Beth. Do you want to start, Mark?
Yes. First thing I want to mention, 2 weekends ago, 3 weekends, I can't remember now. My family and I did the snowball lift in October, and it was wonderful. And it was absolutely great. My wife loves doing it every year, and we were astonished because the parking lot was as full that day. It was a beautiful Sunday, as it is in the best skiing days. Remarkable day. I recommend it to everybody. That said, one of the things I was up on the lift, and when I was looking around up on the lift and hiking down, we sort of hiked all around the place, including some of the bicycle trails. And I realized that there's been no discussion about bicycles on lifts for the last 3 or 4 years. And I'm just curious, is that even in any discussion at this point?
Yeah.
I think where we've left it is, that would be the cart before the horse. Because we only have one real downhill mountain bike trail.
Right.
And why would we want to?
Well, we also,
I don't know.
There's a progression that we would need to have
But
for
we
more
also
downhill
just-
trails if we were to engineer the lift to carry the.
I was going to say, it has to be
I'm just sort
engineered.
of curious what happened after all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's just kind of been put.
Yeah, absolutely, because the engineering of the bull wheels and stuff with that load is not what they're designed
Yeah.
for.
And we did look into more like green, beginner, or intermediate blue trails, and fixing what we have with better signage this year and some repairs to some bad erosion areas.
Okay, I
So,
just curious.
So is that just, that sounds like we're really trying to put the brakes on having bikers out at the snowball. No?
No, there
Not
are,
expand. We don't want to make it any, or
I'd say
It sounds
that
like we're-
the best way to achieve what was being discussed pretty aggressively a couple of years ago is to really improve the signage, do a lot of trail maintenance on the existing trails and rerouting things so that, it's really clear what skill level that particular trail is catering.
we're concerned about sending people up there and then, like them not knowing how to get down or which trail, no.
Well, I just wanted to say, I mean, you may remember, Beth and I went out with the guys from Side Country Sports, and they've seen their mountain biking kind of family and younger novice mountain bikers falling off.
Interesting.
Pretty significantly.
Going to Thomaston.
Really?
Thomaston,
Really?
Because of the lack of easy and intermediate trails
I
and the
see.
lack of signage.
I see.
And some issues with the trails. So
I see.
we went out, walked up with Jeff Senders and Side Country Sports, gave them ideas and Beth's crews on how they can address
Great.
some of that. And I think they've done that, or at least started doing that.
Good.
I think that's a good
Yeah,
start
that's-
to get
that's-
people back there.
yeah.
Because High Country saw people not coming back.
Pulling away, yeah.
Oh, I know when I tried to take my kids out there, there's just nothing but tears, and we haven't gone. I think that
I
was me.
think that
in
was the challenge. I mean, and then there was one trail where a young kid went into the stream, Hosmer Pond Brook there on, you know, it's pretty nasty.
Hiking in the woods, really.
I understand totally.
Yeah.
I do. But we are working on it, and I mean, I think, I'd like to see from a four-season use, mountain biking
Absolutely.
ramping up a little bit. I
Absolutely.
mean, you see,
We did talk about, you know, with the round the mountain trail.
Yep.
You know, the trailhead that's going to be at the Snow Bowl.
Right.
That's going to be a big opportunity for those, you know, beginner, intermediate trails to build off from that. So I think that everybody's sort of waiting for that to coincide with what we want to do next in regards to.
Because they're going to have the easiest way up
Yeah.
yeah.
possible.
And you see every ski resort right now is doing mountain bike trails. I mean, Bridgeton, is it Mount Abram and Bridgeton, or Shawnee Peak and Bridgeton, but Mount Abram is doing a big one, and they're doing more in Millinocket. I mean, they're doing, I think, up at Mount Lee, or Lee, whatever
Be
it
nice
is,
if
Mount
Hosmer
Jefferson.
Pond Road felt a little safer.
But we're working on it.
It's like to ride a bike to out there, it's like the road is so
I mean, I don't
dangerous.
think that's ever realistic to change that road so that it's going to be safer for bikers.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but I think that.
No, it's good, keep it, what about safer for walkers also?
That's the
Not
same
realistic?
problem.
State road and.
It's the same problem.
It's very narrow.
So people
We
do,
need to find a way over,
Trails.
an easier way over our town property.
yes, yes.
Rollins Road area. Yeah.
To your last bullet, which is a great segue into comment about committee, and this is just my perspective, and see if the rest of the board agrees. I think when you talked about Shirt Tail and Barrett's, I certainly agree with that, and many of these other items too, including the Tubing Hill, et cetera. But one of the things that the fuse is kind of short. We're in end of October, and we're going to be into the first of the year before you know it. So you got about 3 meetings of the committee left before we start to talk about budget for the following year. And I know I'm not suggesting the committee has to be cost estimate experts, but I have sat through some meetings where when you went over the Barrett's Cove sketches you've put in the packet and others, there were numbers discussed. Those numbers really need to get to Audra as soon as possible, so that we can start thinking about capital planning for next year and getting them on the list.
Wouldn't that be too bad?
What is really needed, though, with Shirt Tail and Barrett's, would be to have a real landscape designer and engineer come in and take a look at what is there and estimate what it's going to cost to be done.
Well, all I'm saying.
I mean, our committee, I can come up with a number, it's totally
Well,
off the wall.
even if it's a range, Beth, and it is, Allison's correct, it really is Beth's Bailey, this is your department and Audrey. But, if, my feeling is if you go down the road of what you just said, you're talking about 2021.
I mean, some of this stuff should probably just be on our radar for, not necessarily right away, but there are all these resiliency grants and watershed planning opportunities.
Absolutely.
And that it may be that something comes up and we can say, oh, I remember them talking about this. Can we, is this an opportunity to do something there?
It
If we need
is.
to-
It
But if
absolutely
we
is.
just charge ahead and try to say, okay, well, we just have to get it done, then all, just
You're
goes in
right.
the town budget and,
All I'm saying is if possible, if you all, especially you, Beth, agree that one of these or two of these we want to get into 2020, you got to raise the flag on it now. That's all I'm saying.
more late beach playground equipment. That'd be my wish. Maybe you can discuss that as a committee.
There you go.
Has anybody looked into whether it would be possible, any of the middle school playground equipment that they're going to get rid of? Has there been any discussion about transferring any of that anywhere? I know everybody's going to say liability, but if we could
No, you can get around
possibly,
that.
that playground equipment is awesome, and my kids are really upset that it's not going to be there when they get rid of it. If we could
We can look into
find a
it.
place to
Yeah,
put
you
that,
should,
it would be
absolutely.
like Lake Beach, some of it maybe?
Maybe.
Lake Beach,
We gotta have a design of what
Right,
we're doing there
right.
before we move all that.
As a temporary, just like trial place?
I mean,
or-
Lake Beach is really
What a
designed
shovel.
for a giant slide all the way down to the water. I mean, it's sloped, And you've got to build,
To roll down it.
But the top of
Dig out
it
or
isn't
build?
that sloped.
it's not that back, no.
Oh,
No.
it's not that bad.
No, but I mean, in areas,
But
in areas, it's a
It was fun
climb.
to roll down as a
But that's the
kid.
same
It's a
thing
good
as
spot for
Walker
a
Park.
tubing hill.
Downhill's easy.
Tubing hill, yeah.
Great,
It's
great.
there.
Thank you, that's great. What a great package you put together. You really did a good job being succinct. You got a lot on your plate, so focus, focus, focus. Thank you, sir.
No, I just don't want to cough
Right.
anymore.
Thank you. I'm going to,
Sorry, I just wanted to say, I
ahead,
really
go
enjoy
ahead.
watching some of your meetings. I don't ever get around to commenting.
We don't
but
swear too much, I hope.
The YouTube video, it's like, sometimes I'll just, it alerts me, and so I often, with your committee, just have it on in the background or something, even sometimes when I'm driving. And I've really learned a lot, and I just felt like every time I listen, I'm, oh, wow, I just have a very strong feeling that it's useful, and I always get something out of it. I always learn something new, and I just think you have a nice dynamic, and I appreciate it.
Fine, thank you.
thank you very much for all you do. With that said, I know, Jenna, you're getting there, so is it okay if we
My
switch?
coughing fits are increasing as I.
I'm going to suggest we jump to item 10, which is discussion on
I
the,
would appreciate that.
yeah, it is, I think thanks to me.
Yeah, it's because I wasn't there
I know
to
you were.
reel you in.
Thank you. So if you don't mind, is that okay, Jenna?
That would be very, I
Okay,
would
so-
appreciate that. Thank you.
And discussion on deauthorization of
Just
portion of the
in
federal
case I have to
navigation
pack up.
project in Camden Harbor.
Starting to get embarrassed by running out.
And we got an employee here too, and I want him staying here all night because he'll get older.
Employee.
He's getting ready for Santa Claus outfit.
We've got two of them. Are we going to move that?
4 of them.
Not do that tonight? I didn't know.
5.
All right, Jeremy.
All right. There's a memo that was in your packet. We were approached by Lyman and Morse about approaching Congress to deauthorize a portion of what is called the Camden Federal Project area in the harbor. And what is being asked of us is to reach out to our congressional delegation, Senator Angus King and Senator Susan Collins' office, with a proposal to ask them again through the WRDA, which is the Water Resources Development Act of 2020, to ask the Army Corps and ask Congress to deauthorize what is shown on this plan in blue from the Federal Navigation Project area. There is a small piece down on this, where am I? Where's north there? So that's the western, yeah, go west there. Near the travel lift that is in what is called the 10-foot channel area, and then the other piece that's off of Steamboat Landing, which is the 14-foot area.
Also known as the inner and outer.
Yes,
harbors.
inner and outer. Yes, thank you. And as some of you may remember, a couple of years ago, Lyman and Morse had proposed to do a dock system off of near their travel lift that went through the Harbor Committee, went through planning, and actually went through a town zoning or a harbor ordinance amendment to facilitate this, and the town overwhelmingly supported it. Lyman Morse tried to go build it out, and unfortunately, the Army Corps said, oops, can't do that. You're into the area the setback area of the navigation project area, and we can't allow you to do that. So at that time, they did make the Harbor Committee aware of that issue, and the Harbor Committee at the time did voice support for looking into this. And then once you go further towards the 14-foot, the larger blue area, Lyman Morse has obtained what is known as a big grant, a boater infrastructure grant, to provide docking facilities for transient boaters, and fairly large grant. And they do have a proposal out there. It has not been reviewed by the town yet. It will require planning board approval, will require harbor committee approval, and very well could require development agreement approval with the select board and the town. Alternatively, a zoning ordinance or ordinance amendments could facilitate it, but that is in the works, and they are in the planning stages. That could not happen without this area being deauthorized, nor could improvements at Steamboat Landing that the town has contemplated, and there hasn't been any significant planning that has gone into it that I'm aware of, but there is a lot in the comp plan that speaks to Steamboat Landing and trying to improve docking facilities there. And the only way that, well, the only way to really make this work is to do to request Congress to include this in their WRDA of 2020. Unfortunately, there's a deadline on this, and we've been doing our due diligence on this the best that we can, not knowing the whole process. But Angus King's office reached out to us and said there's a deadline of November 1st to submit something for inclusion in the Word of bill. And unfortunately, we don't have until the morning of November 1st to make a decision. We have to get everything lined up so that the Army Corps and Congress is ready to go on November 1st, because then it gets thrown in the bill, and then both houses of Congress work on this, and then it gets passed. But November 1st is the deadline to get something to congressional office on this.
So then that's when the public comment, I've looked at past years of this, and you can see it's like in the Federal Register, and it's like blah, 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 here's the notice, and now these are the projects on the potential thing, and now starts the 90-day public comment period.
That's my understanding, exactly how
Are
you
we
say
lining
it.
up for that? Then we would be in that. And there would be the whole federal process.
I presume this goes through a committee.
It does, the Energy and Public Works Committee, as I recall. Yeah.
They would coordinate the public comment, they would coordinate, blah, 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 make a recommendation to the.
Well, either they include it or they don't include it,
You're
correct?
right, exactly, or
Right.
it never gets to the floor.
Right, or it doesn't.
Or once the whole thing gets to the floor and there's all that stuff, are they allowed to amend it at that point? This is really getting, maybe I should
Yeah, they're
ask this
getting into the
offline.
weeds, I don't know a whole lot about, but
When they put
certainly
in the
they amend all
bridges,
kinds of things,
I don't think, you're talking about
But
infrastructure
sometimes
stuff?
sometimes they have these bills and then you
They
can
might be able to
say,
include this in the
Oh,
defense bill, who knows?
I think she's talking about you're talking about tag-alongs in the bill?
I'm realizing that we're gonna be here all night. It's interesting to
Right.
me, but,
Yeah, me too.
well, I guess I'm wondering if this is the last, it's a very odd process because it's not very clear. It's not easy to find an application for this online, and it's.
Oh, no, it comes right from you got to reach out to the Senate office to ask for an application, and they send you the application, and it's a one-page form, and it asks who the project sponsor is, and in this case, it would be either Susan Collins or Angus King. That's who the project sponsor is. And it gets, again, a one-pager,
We're gonna fill out a
very
form?
detailed.
Yes.
Can we see that form?
Yes.
And that can happen offline too. We can get,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll stop, I'm doing
Yes.
my thing right.
Yeah. So let's maybe try to get back on.
Get to the overview, I'm sorry, and then.
So these authorizations do happen routinely, and this is how harbors are changed and navigation project areas are changed. Right now, there's a very small, I don't know if you can maybe go to another map, but there's a very small portion of the entire harbor, that's probably not the good one.
What are you trying to look at?
What I was trying to just get at was the area, and you can see it there kind of, the area which includes the federal project navigation area in the whole harbor. There's a very small area of that is not included, and that is areas where Lyman Morse already has a docking, their docks
I
at.
mean, there's a very small area of what that's not included.
Well, I was just going back into the inner harbor, what I was trying to explain. I mean, there's a reason why people can't put docks out there anywhere, and that is because it's in the
I think she just had,
navigation area. You missed it there, but
right by, that's it.
so you look at where we have our dock systems, that is not in the navigation area. Where Lyman Morse has their dinghy docks, not in the navigation area. Where the Reeds are doing their project at the boathouse.
1899 version as the
Well,
most.
kind of. I mean, what I was trying to get at was the navigation project area is a big chunk of that harbor, right? And the areas immediately adjacent to the shore are not included in it.
Right, because
And
that's
what
the
we're
intertidal.
trying to do is just extend that area out a little bit more so that structures, meaning dock systems, can be put into the harbor, into those areas.
The reason those parts aren't included in it is mostly it's the littoral zone, it's the intertidal zone. So actually, that should get sea level rising is, but yes, I see.
That's a
what-
good point, too. Where I was going was Thomaston did this. They did a significant portion of their harbor. Rockland did a piece of their harbor to facilitate windjammers coming into town and docking in their harbor. Eastport has done it. Southwest Harbor has done it. Northeast Harbor has done it. St. George. Lots of towns do this, and this is a means to control what happens in your harbor and where things can be placed in the harbor. There is a negative to this. The one downside is that the Army Corps, which conducts maintenance dredges of primarily in Camden of the inner harbor, and then in the outer harbor, they did the last one in 1929, is the best that we can tell. They would not dredge that area that got deauthorized. Now, when we're working with, I mean, if you can imagine, you think of the Lyman Morse right now, or the Reeds, who they dredged theirs. Lyman Morse has dredged theirs multiple times. The areas around their existing dock systems. If this got deauthorized, Lyman and Morse will potentially, if there was ever a need, now keep in mind this area hasn't dredged since 1929, if they ever do need to dredge that area, it would be generally on Lyman Morse to do it, because it's benefiting them. It's their dock system or their marina system that
have
would
to be
need the
part of
dredging.
A development agreement.
Sure, absolutely.
Sure.
And so really, this was going to try to be a discussion on this issue. I wish we had more time. Unfortunately, we don't have more time. I was in contact with Senator Collins' offices today, and there is unfortunately no other mechanism to deauthorize the harbor. And you'd have to wait until 2022 if they do one in 2022. And they're generally 2 years, but sometimes they go to every 4 years on these. But I will say that Senator Collins and King's office have been super supportive, and they're willing to do anything they can to assist with this project.
Discussion.
If I may, so I walked out, yes, we had a conversation about this yesterday, and I feel pretty good about this action. I don't feel very good about the process. I feel like the public hasn't been included, and as someone, and maybe I'm overly sensitive to this, but as someone who grew up here in town, my family made a living with a restaurant on the harbor. Anything to do with the harbor, as everyone in this room has probably seen, makes my hackles go up. I know that I'm not the only person that feels that way. I'm concerned. I mean, last night I was lying awake. I had people's comments running through my head. Who would say what to me? Who might have a concern? And everything that I'm hearing from people that I trust, Bill, Steve, you, Audra, is that this is kind of a win-win situation, that we might want to take more out if we had more time to plan. Two aspects of this do make me nervous. One is, of course, the time frame. The second is doing anything with the harbor, and I'm going to put the latter aside for a moment. I do understand that Lyman Morse didn't find out about this until 2 or 3 weeks ago, that they would have to go through this process, but I guess when you're laying out $10 million for a development project, you kind of have to wonder how this wasn't like a part of things that was presented earlier on, that this could come to pass as something that they would need from us so that we could educate ourselves a little bit more time.
Understood.
Sorry,
Fair
not being terribly
fair
articulate at
point
the moment.
taken. I mean, I don't think anyone, I mean, they had a lot of planning into this.
Of course, yeah.
And they were working with me on this for a little while here, and I mean, this just, again, it came to all of our attention that we didn't know when that deadline was, because again, some of these WRTA bills, they just get extended for multiple years sometimes, and then, or when is that deadline? No one could say what that deadline was until just 3 weeks ago when Chris Rector's office said, yeah, November 1st. So I understand, and I appreciate that completely. I will say, I know it doesn't impact, I mean, it's not about the deauthorization piece, but when we're talking about any improvements, now, keep in mind, even the dock system that they had proposed by their heavy lift, that approval, although the ordinances are in place for it, that approval is gone. So that's going back to the planning board at some point. So there will be a process for the planning, public hearing in front of the planning board. And then same with their proposed marine expansion, which is a much larger proposed expansion than what they're proposing over there by the heavy lift. That will also not only need the planning board public hearing, that will go also to the harbor committee, as would the other one. And then it may need ordinance amendments, which would go to town vote, and it may need a development agreement with the town, which would go to town vote after you guys come to an agreement potentially with them. So there is, I think, some built into this, some
Safety nets.
some safety nets on what happens out there. If the concern is really what happens out there, I think that's, we have those safety nets. And broadly, this is really, for me, I think it's about, and I think for others, this is about the town gets more control, actually, what can happen out in the harbor. Just throwing that out there.
Right. And could I ask a question of Steve, actually?
You can.
Steve, some of the really busy boating harbors, and maybe I'm behind the times, but I didn't hear necessarily on Jeremy's list. I mean, Castine, I mean, are those places like that that are significant boating meccas in Maine, are they,
That have been
I didn't see any of
deauthorized?
them on the list. The harbors that I traditionally think of as
I will
big
say, Nick,
Brooklyn.
and before Steve tries to answer that, I looked really, really hard to find all the deauthorizations that have happened in Maine.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard to do. What you end up having to do is you end up finding that WRTA bill that was passed in the year 1996 or 1992.
Yeah.
And then you got to go page through a couple hundred pages to see St. George Harbor or Rockland or Thomaston. But I know Rockland and Thomaston have both gone through this process, and those are two pretty significant
Yeah,
voting.
I mean, I really can't answer that. I do know that this move looks like, basically, like, as Jeremy said, the only drawback is if we ever did need to dredge that area, which again, we haven't dredged it since 1929 or.
And it's significantly less than 14 feet. So once they stopped dredging it, it did come back up to the pre-dredging levels. And they've left it there like that, presumably because we don't have steamboat landing. The original reason for that in 1903 was steamboat landing to facilitate that deep water access, which when steamboat landing went away, there was no longer that critical need. And so it's been sitting there.
Yeah, so that's the only drawback, and if you're going to, in the future, if you can put that into some kind of agreement that if it ever needed to be dredged, then Lyman Morse would take care of that, then that alleviates my concern. I mean, it just gives the town the option to do something more with that area in the future if we decide to, either to rebuild
I
steamboat
think,
landing or.
Jenny, your question is more toward congestion in a harbor and boating, and
Yeah,
I think it's a very
and
legitimate question, but it's something that's going to come
Harbors that are
downstream.
comparable to Camden, I don't see Rockland as remotely comparable to Camden, personally. I'm just thinking harbors that that are comparable in traffic or comparable in the boats that they attract, comparably sized towns.
Yeah, so like Northeast Harbor or
You
Southwest
said
Harbor?
Southwest Harbor, yeah,
Southwest is
I know
pretty big.
that they have been, but I guess I'm kind of, I mean, I guess that's something that I can try to research, I guess.
Well, it's also, Jen, a good question. I think it's something that definitely has to be analyzed when you get down to any project that might occur in the harbor. I would agree that has to be covered. I think at this point, unfortunately, and I would agree with your comment also about, it is always frustrating to get a gun put to your head.
Yeah.
But it happens. It happens in real life, and shoulda, coulda, woulda, yeah. I respect that frustration.
It's not the action so much that I'm concerned about as it is the fact that is the public process and the number of stakeholders that, whether it's Sam Appleton who owns the waterfront and, a waterfront business, whether it's schooner captains, whether it's any waterfront property owners, whether it's pilots that do flights, anyone who has a stakeholder in the harbor, I feel should have the opportunity to make a comment on, should at least be aware, and we should make an effort to make them aware of every stage of this process, because I feel like transparency, anything's going to happen in the harbor, it cannot be done in secrecy. It needs to involve the whole community from the front foot. That's all. That's just where I'm.
Other comments?
I will say, I can reach out to both Senator Kings and Collins' office tonight. I'll send an email out asking for, because I know you guys have a scheduled meeting tomorrow. I can at least reach out and see if they can come up with a list
Of
quickly.
others? That's a problem.
I've sent Army Corps emails. Getting a response from Army Corps in a prompt manner is not easy. But I've been told by our senator's office that if we need something from Army Corps, they can make it happen fairly quickly. So what I'll do is I'll send an email to both Angus and Susan's offices and just say, hey, can you get us some more information on what other harbors in Maine have done this?
Other comments? Other
I mean,
comments?
I think, I've heard a lot that there are just no possible downsides, Allison. This is going to give the town the opportunity to control things. It's always better if the town controls things. It's said in the memo that everything from, local fishermen to or commercial fishermen to large piers are better under local control, if the local control can just do everything. I don't agree with that at all. There are certain things that are just, local control also means local liability. And I certainly don't think that, the oceans would be better off if catch limits were all just left up to local select boards and, the people to decide what made sense for them. So I think if you want to commercialize the harbor, if you want it to be something more, if we want more development there, then certainly it is better for us to have more control. It is, it opens up more opportunities my concern is that for a large number of people in Camden, I think that part of the control that gives them peace of mind is the inability to do different things. So by, opening up all these possibilities, we've just eliminated a safety net for a lot of people that are just, select boards change and people don't pay attention during elections. And I've seen it, we've all seen it over and over again, that things pass, that nobody really knows what they're voting on. I was at that town meeting where we voted on the Lyman Morris thing, and most people nobody knows what we're doing. And to me, even I didn't really. But that is, that part aside, the reason that this federal navigation area is so protected and that it has to be an act of Congress in order to deauthorize it, which is mostly to allow anybody to make money off of it, is because it was all federal taxpayer money that went into it. And so it was supposed to be places that were reserved as a public space. And I've been, as Jenna said, really concerned about the process, because when you apply for these big grants and it's known, everybody that operates a boat out there knows where the federal, where the navigation, where the channel is, where the project is. It's like sacred ground. And so now,
I think everyone knows where the channel is, correct?
well, over here, well, let's see, let's get to the,
I mean, because what's
So-
marked out there is the channel. What's not marked is the navigation area.
Well, but in
Just-
one
I
case,
just wanted to
yes, that's
clarify
true.
that.
That is true. In this case, though, we are asking to, so the area, the inner harbor area that we would be asking to deauthorize, I see this Gartley and Dorsey survey where they say the channel is compared to the project area. It's very, very close. And on the Army Corps maps, it's actually really indecipherable, the boundary between the channel and the project area.
There are meets and bounds out there for the project area, just so you know.
What's that?
There are meets and bounds out there for the project area somewhere. So where these
Yeah,
lines
well,
are drawn.
Either way,
I'm just-
it's close. So and the reason for the setback, so here, even, the difference between the limit of right here is the limit of the channel versus the limit, this is the limit, this is the channel, this is the project area. And so we are still, there's a reason why there's a setback from the channel. It's for the same reason that you can't put a fixed object right next to the highway. So we are coming really close to kind of that sacred ground by what we're asking to do here. I've talked to people definitely that don't love the idea of extending this out. but-
Likewise, just to clarify, likewise, where this new, potentially this new deauthorized navigation area, new line gets strong, maybe, there's that setback, you see the red setback that is over there, that would be off of that line too, I'm just saying.
Yeah, but it's the fact that, I mean, so they knew that they weren't able to do the thing they wanted to do over here because of the channel.
They didn't know that
Not
until
that
they went to the Army Corps.
Right, but then they found that out, and then, so it's just the amount of planning that's gone into this supposedly, and the inability to know that it was going to be an act of Congress that would ultimately facilitate it. It's very frustrating, and
There is a potential, another option that someone may have to put something into the navigation project area, and that's something called Section 408. So
Well,
that
right.
is possible, but that is it's a very different process, and it is it's Army Corps only, and it's the Army Corps' jurisdiction only, and there is no
and they should
public.
know right from the start, just Googling it, that the 408 process is not going to work for a commercial entity.
Probably
They
not.
say it right on their 408 guidelines PDF that.
That's correct.
So,
It's true, however, it has worked in other states, in other regions. They have used 408 for commercial activity. I'm just
yeah, it
throwing it
wasn't,
out there.
it's, what would be highly likely is that we could get our extension approved to recreate Steamboat Landing and I'm saying all this,
Usually,
I'm
yeah.
probably going to,
I understand where you're going. I mean, you're
I
you're thinking
appreciate the
outside
way
the
that
box
Lyman
on
Morris
everything.
has gone about this. I think they're really interested in making changes and the way they've gone about it so far. Most of all of this, hasn't been really secret at all. Months ago, it was on the Pembe pilot, exactly what they were hoping to do. It says it right in the grant application. I looked back in 2005 over what was going on with Wayfair and the proposals there and the uproar from the community and then the ultimate compromise thing in the Camden Area Futures Group, and there was all this crazy stuff. And I got to the end of this document, and it was like, this was the compromise thing that they had come up with. And it was like gut-wrenching. It was like Camden really had like a gun to their head. Like, if you still want anything to do with boats on this harbor, like, you're going to have to accept 14 condos right now, or you're never going to see a boat again.
And
It was
only
like-
2+ acres of working waterfront
Yeah, right.
in easement only
Yeah,
out
it
of
was
8
like,
acres.
but still like condos on the second level. And that was the compromise. So we should be like doing backflips of excitement that we have a company here that wants to do something. And I think the thing for me that was the kicker that started to get me worked up about thinking that maybe there was an additional negative aspect of this
because I do agree that in terms of if we're actually worried about what happens in the harbor, there, as a result of this, we have, as a town, we have plenty of safeguards and opportunities to get involved. If one of us were to become so worried about the Pandora's box that this opens up, we could, let's go to the Charter Commission, and they're looking at they're looking at what to write into the charter and say, you can never do this or never do that. The people in Camden have many mechanisms for making sure that things don't happen, that they don't want to happen, or, maybe things that do. So I'm not so concerned about that. I was concerned for a little bit about this idea that it's never going to need to be dredged because it hasn't been dredged since 1929, and it's this miracle area that once you dredge it, it just stays. Well, it started in 1903 is when they did it, and then they dredged it in 1929, and maybe sometime in between that, and then let it sit, and then in like the 50s, we burned up Steamboat Landing. Steamboat Landing stopped being used, and so this accumulated, and now it's back to, for a long time, it's been back to 1899 levels, so pre-dredging. So it's not like it just stayed dredged, which is what was kind of sold to us from the beginning, and it frustrated me that it's like this lack of knowledge of, which is never going to need to be dredged again. No, they just haven't dredged it, which actually means it might really need to be dredged should we ever decide that 14 feet of depth really matters. I do not like dredging very much because of all the habitat it destroys. I think Steve's, but I would have liked to get input from the boating community about whether it's dangerous for the town to give up, because here Lima Morse is saying they want to build their thing so that people can access, boats that need that 14 feet of water can access. And their areas, it's really going to be over here where there's not much danger. It's the shoaling and the accumulation is all happening kind of in the area that if we wanted to extend Steamboat Landing would be impacted. So if it's so important that they have this 14 feet of deep water, it can't both be important and not important. So I really wanted more clarification on, because you can see it's coming up. It's like 12.5 to 13 feet, but then sea level rise is probably going to take care of the difference. So, as Bob
You look at the 2012 and the 2018 surveys, comparison, I did this today, and it is quite interesting because those shoaling numbers are pretty much exactly right from 2012 to 2018. Right.
1899.
Yes, I understand, but it hasn't. And I know there's not many years between 12 and 218.
There's never going to be a mountain there. It's not just going to keep it levels out with the surroundings. So
and some of those
depending on what we
areas
dredge here or
potentially are
there.
boulders and other things. I mean, there's there's odd anomalies in that, and
Oh,
I have
Jeremy.
no idea what.
The red is everything that no longer meets the target depth of the project area.
Right, understood.
And so it came up, and it's not going to come up much more, and sea level's going to rise about a foot and 2 feet maybe. So it's probably. The point is, I don't see a huge danger for Camden here. The big danger would be, the bigger danger would be, I think, throwing away the opportunity for the town to have a discussion about something that could be very beneficial for Camden and the working waterfront in the end. I am still going to continue to make an enormous fuss about some of the process issues and just, it's like the fact that I could find surveys online with yesterday when I asked some of the people that are supposed to be experts on this project about dredging and what we know, and I think I heard something about how maybe not even a half an inch of sediment has accumulated since 1929, and it's just not true. We need to have, if we're going to take on a really massive project, we need to have our facts straight, and everybody involved needs to have a very high standard in terms of the information that is presented. And I think it'll be a better project in the end if we do push back hard right now so that
we can all be on our game. But I will, would support this going forward, and thanks for indulging my long
I did
diatribe.
reach out to Army Corps this morning to ask the question about the differences between the 2012 and the 2018 depths and what triggers, where are we? Because I was curious too, on where we are, how they would
And the
get
inner
involved.
harbor is coming up too.
Yeah, well, it always does with those, all
But
stuff
not
going on.
that much. It's so
It's because of all the
fascinating
good
that this-
erosion control
Thanks.
work
Let's,
we're doing out in the field.
Do you want, if it's okay, also going to switch
More on
horses
that
for a
later.
second. We can come back.
Thank you. I need to hit the restroom at some point, so I want to talk while I still can. Let me start off by saying that the process we're stuck with sucks. There's no question about it. We have to make a quick decision without as much time as we would like, but that's the way life is sometimes. And so basically, when I have to look at this, I tend to have to try to look at the big picture instead of looking at this or that. I try to look at the big picture and what is the scope of everything we're looking at. And we're presented with a situation where we have to make a quick decision to facilitate the possibility that we could have some growth in town that presents jobs, economic growth, and put on by a local company, which I think is one of the questions I asked of them yesterday, and we met with them yesterday. I wanted to know, the ownership of the company. I wanted to know, is this a corporate entity coming in that doesn't care about Camden, or is this a local company? It's a local company. And so, faced with a tough situation and a difficult decision, I lean in favor of doing this, because if we make this decision to go ahead and ask the federal government to return that part of the harbor to us, that's all we've done up to this point. It's simple as that. And from there, we can really take control, and then we have the time and the ability to control the process and really spend some time in the weeds with Lyman Morrison saying, this is what we like, this is what we don't like, this is what we need from you, this is what we'd like you to reconsider. And maybe it goes away, but we still have the opportunity to make a choice that I think is beneficial to the town in the best way that we can. And if we don't do this, then we give that away. We give that ability to control the process away. And even though I don't like the process because the timeline is tough, I think we have to go forward because it gives us the ability to do wonderful things for the town in a way that we would like to have it done, or not at all. But we have no choice if we don't do this. And I think that's one of the reasons, we can't go to all over town and go, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? But that's one of the reasons we're elected for, is to learn about things, make the decision that we're best suited for, hopefully, and informed upon, for the people in the town. That's why we're here. If this weren't the situation, and like somebody already said, there will be town votes, there will be planning board involvement. Nothing will happen without the people of the town being very involved, because they have to be with this style of government. We're not a city council. We can't make decisions without the town when it really counts. But we're the people that first make the decisions about, okay, this is something we should move ahead for and bring it to the town. And I think sometimes that's why we're elected. We have to make some tough decisions and then get the town involved. So I think, for me, I don't have a choice in saying, I don't like the process, but the bigger benefit is going ahead and seeing where we can go from here. And we will have much more control afterwards. This is an unfortunate situation that came upon us, but I think we have to go for it.
I think it's all good points. I share. We could have, should have, would have, wish things were a little different, but they're not. And I totally agree. I think my responsibility as elected officials to do what I believe strongly is best for the citizenry of Camden without a survey of every person in town, because that's impossible. Prefer it? Sure. But I want to make it clear, we're not deciding, we're not approving any project of any kind whatsoever, any development in the harbor. We're just clearing the way for the potential to do so. In that potential, there is, Jeremy listed some perceived or actual liability to the town of the dredging thing. However, technically, as I look at it, I don't see it for two or three reasons. One, the data doesn't show a trend line of 90 years of increasing substantially, even if you want to say it increased a
It
foot.
was never going to increase more than to get with the surroundings. It was never that high. But
Well, okay, it was never that high, fine. It is not has substantial motion in terms of, as the Inner Harbor shows, dramatic increases. That's why Lyman Morse is dredging along the Inner Harbor this December to try to regain some of their limited depth that they have there, one. Two, there's no magic about 14 feet in boats. I mean, Steve can speak to that. There's not a hell of a lot of boats that have keels that go down 14 feet. At least I don't know aware of any. There are mega ships out there in the world that'll never work in Camden Harbor ever. Three, the sea rise issue that I did bring up, absolutely. We, on the many hands, when we're trying to justify legitimately other things in the town that we need to approach, we talk about sea rise, what, 1 to 4 feet. You could argue about how much it is, of course. Mean sea level that the Corps is using in this report, I don't know what it's based on. I can assure you, though, knowing the Corps, it is not last year's data. So mean sea level, meaning mean low tide sea level, which these numbers are measured from. This is low tide, mean sea level depths, right? That's not going to stay constant either. And if you believe 1 to 4 feet, this discussion about dredging and depths is moot. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't argue on when it's positive about sea level, and then the other one, when it doesn't work to your advantage, you discount it, and it doesn't work. But I think most importantly, we're faced with a decision, and I think that's our job. We have to yay or nay a decision on this need for the submission this week to get through the Corps and get it to the senators and get it in the package. I'm one of the ones that said I don't see a downside to the citizenry of Camden.
we're not doing it, we're doing it tomorrow? Because
Yep.
we want, right.
Tomorrow.
I want to talk about the meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow, well, because unfortunately, because Taylor couldn't be here tonight, and he's the 5th member of the Select Board and wanted to participate, we did announce and schedule a meeting tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock to discuss the vote on this matter of sending the letter. And one other thing on the agenda also, it's kind of minor, but
What's the other thing on the
I
agenda?
thought if we had time, we could set the priority goal workshop. That's just an item that was left.
Minor?
Well, I'm just setting the date.
Oh, set the
Setting
date
the
for
date,
the,
yeah.
okay, oh, sorry.
Not,
I was like, that,
That's awfully quick.
what'd you do that after I said I might not be able to come? Like,
Yes.
Allison's not going to be here. Let's do our
everybody
goals.
talk about your goals.
So yeah, that's
right.
the action goes forward. All valid points, all great discussion.
We could set the website workshop, maybe.
What's that, right?
Good idea. That's
Oh,
a good idea.
I actually listed it as workshops. I don't think we limited it to.
I mean, it doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't
You can
matter.
always amend the
We can
agenda.
schedule any workshop. I just threw it, since I get so little time with the select board together, as he's reeling from 4.5 hours, whatever it's been. No, I'm only kidding. This is normal.
You set the agenda.
It's only been 3.5 hours. Yeah, I know, hit me again. Tomorrow morning at 11, we'll decide this letter and then also discuss some workshops.
And I will work very hard to get
Yeah.
you more info for tomorrow morning on
Thank-
what other harbors. I'll try to get a list of all the harbors.
Oh, I mean, seriously, your time is really valuable. I mean, can
It
we
takes- it
negotiate
takes
that a
me-
little bit?
It takes me an email for me to send this evening to
What do you want
both
to
of those
negotiate,
offices,
Allison?
ask that question. That's all it will take.
That's a useful data point for,
Yeah,
don't think it is.
process is really my greatest concern.
I'd like to know, because I read that it requires a public process, this whole thing. So what does the congressional delegation or Angus King, or what did they define as the public process?
They indicated that a select board meeting decision by the select board is what is required.
And we specifically asked
Asked that
about this
question.
because we wanted to be 100% certain that it was the select board and not the legislative body of the town.
Just about to say, because I'm not convinced that all of them understand the difference between senators and, city councils and select boards and,
No, we specifically
Explained that.
asked them this.
And I
Who's
think,
them?
and I think we're talking to,
Chris Rector and the
Okay.
congressional delegation.
which,
because we don't have,
And we
whatever.
looked and saw what Thomaston did, and Thomaston, it was the letter from the select board.
Right.
That's the process that they used.
That would have been enormously useful information to have had at some, like, that would have been, like, really helpful information to have. Just an outline at any point saying, this is the process that they've recommended we follow.
In
and-
another
they
town?
don't
And
really
we-
give,
yes, and
they
we
don't
made
really
sure-
give you that so much.
No, from you, like, from you guys, I would have believed you if you said, this is what they say, just what Audra's saying right now, but written down ahead of time. Just,
Right.
because it didn't feel, I don't know, but can this letter that we're going to send, or anything that we're going to send on behalf of the town, can that be available to us before, so that we're not just giving a theoretical endorsement and then our names get put on, or,
Sure.
like, the letter gets written later after the.
Application?
Like, I'd like to know what we're actually putting,
Yep, I will
Approving.
try to have a draft for you tomorrow morning.
Or at least the outline, at least we know. I think categorically, you might be saying, it does, fill in the name of the party. That's
Yeah, that's easy. Yeah.
That's the stuff we're looking at. What's the application? It's obviously going to have meets and bounds in it. I don't need to see that because I couldn't verify
No,
if I wanted to.
those aren't ready to go at the
Well,
present
that's
time.
got to be done by an engineer, I'm presuming.
Surveyor.
Otherwise, we
when is
might
that
want.
going to be done?
That's
It's
about done.
an hour.
About-
It'll
about
take them
done.
to do an hour.
Meets and
once-
bounds
if
pretty
this
easy.
happens.
When,
That would happen probably tomorrow after the vote.
Yep. Yeah, you obviously have to.
everything I've seen is an August, for the other sections, this is an August 29th deadline, so I'm confused about the,
Oh.
whatever. For section
If
701.
if that's true, we're dead in the water.
No, I mean, it came from the senator's office November 1.
Yeah, all right.
It was a deadline.
So anyway, that's the great discussion. Thanks. Thank you, Jeremy. We want to move on to,
We have something else?
yeah, we do the approval of the Village Green Honor Roll.
Right, yes, thank you.
Of course, welcome. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for moving that for me. I'm
That's-
going to try to
That's-
make it to the end.
Your call.
Can do this, the
Without coughing fits.
Roll and then,
background information is all,
it's in here.
everything,
Outline it, Allison, or do you want?
yes, I'm just trying to get myself out of 1899 here.
Formally excuse myself.
You feel better.
Thank you. I feel okay. It's just this cough.
That was actually October, but it happens a lot. It happens 4 to 8 times a month. No, that was,
Your microphone's not on.
oh, he's just asking me about the harbor photos and the flooding and the, that's,
Asking when the photos were dated, when those were from. I was curious.
Talk
Those
about-
ones
talk
were
about
from-
depths of water.
I think October of 2018. Yeah. But that's not because it's only happens then, that's just when I don't go out there every single time anymore and photograph. October 28th is coming up again if you want, and this, it's a rare
It's the midday
daytime, yeah, so it's like 11, no, it's a, well, the reason that the tides are, yes, there is, the moons are involved in the tides, but it's not like,
How many moons do we have?
it's not as linear of a relationship as many imagine.
Okay,
But anyway,
on to the honor roll.
yes, the honor roll,
What did you say the tide needs to be for that?
11:09.
7.9.
Okay.
So on the 28th and the 11:30 in the afternoon, it's going to be like a 12.3.
You can have lunch in the water.
I have a 12-foot tide on Sunday, October 27th.
Yeah, but I think that's late, it's,
That's at 10:43 a.m. and then 11.8 feet, 11:11 that night.
yeah. The one I'm really promoting is the midday, October 28th, just because it'll be nice.
Thank you. Honor roll.
Okay, I'm trying to find
I
the,
have it here if you want to. Oh, I guess so.
did everybody read it?
I did.
96 of 104.
Thank you.
I did read it. I did read it. I honestly, I don't feel as I'm an expert here to tell you
Oh,
the truth.
no.
But I didn't.
Was it the wrong version?
Oh, maybe this is this is the one I downloaded from
Oh,
onto my computer earlier in the day.
okay.
It's,
Wasn't the core of this eligibility requirements?
yeah, it's basically, it's just creating, and now this virus is
Can you
back.
just describe what has changed?
Well, before there was no written policy on how to determine who should go, who was eligible to go here. This version suffices for now,
Okay,
except for that glaring typo.
okay.
But this is the issue of that I presented last time, where various people have been turned down because they didn't have this form. But it was when the fundraising was done for the honor roll, it was never very clearly defined how they were going to determine residency, what was going to be the sufficient paperwork, if there were any exceptions that could be made. What if you returned to Camden, but your enrollment papers say that you started somewhere else? All these little things that don't quite come up when you are just, they wanted to honor people who have served during wartime and to do it with the monument. So it was originally the fundraising committee headed by Elizabeth Moran, who was at the time the director of the library, who was a very logical person to have kind of heading up both the fundraising and then the applications that would, or the collection of names that would come in. So she would vet those people, not necessarily, at the beginning, they weren't using a specific form. It was more just, tell us about the people that you know that are Camden residents that, would be eligible to be on this wall. Later on, after Elizabeth retired from the library and the job was kind of passed on to a committee, Jim Kierstead had been, and you'll remember he came to us a couple years ago, desperate for relief from this job of
Making a decision.
Yeah, so he had started out, he was very involved in the initial fundraising and all of it, and all for the, noble reasons that we, all are happy to have the wall. But, so when Elizabeth retired, it was like, okay, well, Jim can kind of take over this. When people contact him about the wall, he'll look into it. And he was, didn't have there was never any written policy, just whatever everybody remembered. And so as you start to have more like turnover and very difficult cases come up, it's just been really hard for one person to decide. And they got in the habit of saying, okay, well, since it can get so political, let's just look at this DD Form 214, which comes from it's a military discharge paper that says what your hometown of record was at the time of enlistment. And that way we can just avoid any problem. We'll just go with that. But of course, that didn't just eliminate all the problems, because you can have paperwork that's wrong. You can have people that will just happen to be in, a different place for this very little bit of their life when they started.
Extenuating circumstances.
Right, extenuating circumstances. So, that's why we have all kinds of different, the zoning board of appeals. We have it written into our zoning code that, this is the process where we foresee that we may want to make special exceptions. We'll make them under these conditions, and these are the people who will decide.
Right.
So that's the
Okay.
the initial process that we've attempted to set up here. It can be modified again. It's sort of town-owned infrastructure on town-owned property. The select board controls it. It's one of the rare things that we actually do kind of control.
We think we control.
Right, or we're just now realizing we control. And so this sets up, we can change it at a later point, but this sets up the basics. We left a lot of it the same from sort of what the general practice had been.
So the Legion also wrote a great deal of this, which is,
great.
and that's wonderful, because we have
good background information.
we have a good partner in them
Is
for
really
this
the crux
project.
of this, the eligibility requirements, that's the crux of this document, really.
And some, the eligibility requirements, but also just, who's going to decide and what's the process. So
the
the Legion
process.
has generously, they understand how to deal with all they
Right.
can help validate paperwork. And
Right.
so what will happen now is people will, should this be approved tonight, there will be an application that is submitted to the town office. And then saying, this is, we want to be on the wall, very, very simple. Then that goes to to the American Legion,
Mm-hmm.
to Post 30 in Camden. They will, at their discretion, convene an internal committee, or really however they want to do it, to go over the basics of, a lot of the cases are just very easy to figure out. And then they'll provide recommendations. And the one I'm holding up here is the wrong version. It's supposed to say it's not a memorial, it's not just for people who've died, it's
For service.
yes. And then is yours the updated version?
It is, you want it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's well-written, I think, but here.
Well,
There you go.
so then, so there'll be a spot on the application that says the recommendation from the American Legion is that they're either approved, denied, or referred to a committee,
The honor roll committee.
to the honor roll committee, which will be appointed by the select board. Any appeals of the recommendations by the Camden American Legion Post 30 to the Select Board will be submitted to the Camden Veterans Honor Roll Appeals Committee, appointed by the Select Board, who will submit an additional recommendation to the Camden Select Board. In some cases, the Legion may, so people will have the ability to appeal the decision to this committee, or they'll, sometimes the Legion will also they're not looking to be political about this, they're just looking to be helpful. So Jeff Sukeforth has been involved in this for years. John French actually helped write some of this too, apparently a while back, because everybody has recognized for a long time this problem.
The need for this.
Yeah, so then they'll, basically, it's just, the final decision will come to the select board. And it will be made in a public place where there'll be, a final decision.
I see.
And it's just eliminates all of this stuff in the background where people feel like they haven't gotten a fair chance or a clear answer.
But at the same time, it will have been, vetted by the Legion.
Yeah,
If it's controversial, you'll have a committee that's looking through it. So it's not like it's going to be a great deal of additional responsibility on the select board.
No, it
Because
will
a lot of
almost-
that background work has
It'll
been
almost
done
always
for
be a
you.
consent agenda item. I would certainly hope.
Sure. Should be a blank, yeah, I agree.
But it's, yeah.
The only question, and it was real, I thought the process was great, the setup was great, it's got appeals, it's, select board control. The only thing because I'm not hellishly knowledgeable in it, but I do remember some problems with when the eligibility suggests a person has to have been in active duty during a war designated by the United States government. Does that preclude Vietnam?
No, it doesn't. And that is something that may need to be looked at.
War designated. by the
It is an official war. That one actually is.
Is.
Vietnam wasn't.
No, it was.
It is.
It is. Yeah, you
Almost
can
Korea
call,
was-
there's official dates.
action.
And then, right, but that is, so the American Legion used to prohibit people from joining that
Right,
didn't
right.
serve during wartime.
Right.
But that policy has been changed. It's
Okay,
now open
cool.
to everybody.
I just-
It may,
curious.
in the future, make sense to look at opening this up to people who've served during non-official war times, because if you serve during a political skirmish and there are a lot of ways to serve your country, and it doesn't always have to be during a defined.
What happens with Afghanistan and Iran and?
Those are defined, those are allowed right now.
Okay.
But so that's the kind of stuff, it will evolve, and we can,
All right.
we
So
can
I-
look at it there,
just
but we're just
curious.
trying to get it. And then the recommendation tonight also would be so that we're really lucky actually to have the people that are willing to,
Oh, yeah.
aside from me, I'm just a tag along, but the others have actual real knowledge and skill. So Elizabeth Moran, who did has been the most longstanding involved person, is willing to serve on the Honor Roll Appeals Committee. Also Jeff Sukeforth, who has, that one speaks for itself. And then it would be the town manager and a member of the select board.
Okay. No, I think it's great. I think it's a great, I didn't even consider it, it's beyond a starting point. It's great. And to document it, well, what a coup, honestly. Do I have a motion to accept this?
Can we discuss it?
If you want to discuss it before, that's fine.
Yeah, I just want to say a
Sure,
couple
problem.
things. Number one, I remember in previous board, none of you remember that I was, where we had a problem with somebody that wanted to be a part of the
Designee.
designee, and it was somebody that was, had lived in Camden for most of his life, but actually enrolled somewhere else. And that was a tough situation. And I totally believe in what I learned years ago. Sometimes you need to pay attention to letter of the law versus spirit of the law and make appropriate things. But I'm also, the second part of it is, I'm also uncomfortable because I did not serve, making a decision about that. So I'm much happier to make sure that the recommendations come from people that I feel are legitimately able to
That have served.
make a judgment based on their experience in this area. So as long as that's a part of it, and there are people, you know, that the American Legion people feel that they're being represented well, then I'm okay with it. Do the American Legion people, they're totally comfortable with this?
They
yes.
wrote the majority of this
Okay, I just
policy.
want to make sure.
And by that, yeah. And it's not the kind of thing, so they didn't do the original fundraising for it, and it was the Lions Club, actually, that was the most involved. And it kind of, over the years, got, as the originally very involved people and organizations changed, they kind of took it on as a being willing to help. It's not like, they don't have sort of a pride of, like, well, we decide who's going to be on the wall. It's they, from what I've gleaned, it's just, they're just trying to help. And mostly they err on the side of wanting to honor veterans. They all have, they felt, or some of the people I've talked to, I certainly can't speak for the whole group, but
I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that the recommendation is coming from people that, you know, should have more of a say than I should about that decision.
right,
Okay,
yeah. So,
so do we move?
found it, finally. Good.
I'll make a motion that we approve the, hold on, let me find it, the Veterans Honor Roll Policy, Village Green Veterans Honor Roll Policy.
Second.
Discussion? None, all those in favor? 4-0, good job.
And you also want to create and appoint the Honor Roll Appeals Committee?
Besides, what do you mean, our representative?
Yeah, so we should,
You have to create the committee and then appoint the
we
members.
appoint the members, so.
All the members we
Detailed
appoint?
who they
I
were
thought you
going to be.
already detailed some names, didn't you?
Yes, but that wasn't included in the motion, and I didn't,
Well, we can do another motion, that's fine,
Yes,
that's
yeah.
fine. How many members, do we know the names? You want to make a motion for the
Yes.
names?
yes.
Okay.
But I didn't want to be so presumptuous as to think that the select board would choose me as the select board representative. So I'm uncomfortable making the motion, but I'm willing to do
Give me
it.
the
I
name.
make a motion, we include Allison as the Select Board representative, and that she finish the rest of the motion.
That's fine.
Okay, I feel much better now. So
Besides Allison McKellar,
I
who
would
else can be in this
move
committee?
that we appoint Elizabeth Moran, Jeff Sukforth, and I think it specifically says the town manager, so that's not up for,
4 people?
yes, and myself.
You don't want
as-
an odd number? All right, it's
No,
up to you.
I want to succeed at this.
Okay.
And if we, the select board, should the select board want to,
Okay. Okay. Be the
it shouldn't be the type of thing where there's like ties and stuff.
I
and
agree, I
We
agree.
need to talk
And the
more if it
select
gets
board- And
there.
the select board can always act as referee.
And I should also, just full disclosure, Elizabeth Moran is not a Camden resident. She's currently a Rockport resident. But as Mark loves to point out, which is for the good,
have to
there's
be.
no requirement. And in this case,
Do a
yeah.
second for those 4 people.
Second.
Discussion. All's in favor? 4-0. Committee appointed. Last item on the agenda is the approval of the letter for McKed to Knox County.
I haven't read it, but I really support
did.
the concept that we discussed ahead of time.
So another thing that I need help from somebody on the select board with. So Camden's representative to the Knox County Budget Committee is very unsupportive of everything that's being discussed in this letter.
Hold on, have you already talked to him?
A few people have.
I'll talk to him.
Yeah, so anyway, that was, yeah.
We could all,
I
Yeah.
doubt that. Does he
Oh,
know that
no,
we're
no,
already,
no,
we're already
he's-
paying for it?
He's got, yes, he knows all this. He's got history. He was probably one of the most hostile budget committee members
I
when
know,
I went a
before
few
he-
years ago and presented with McEd.
Wait, back up,
And,
back up.
sorry.
Not a secret, our representative elected by the people is
Was?
Randy Stearns.
Yeah,
Was elected
What,
by...
how was he elected to the position?
It's
Through
one
the
of those-
ballot.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, it's kind of like the personnel board a little bit, and it's not in task, but in just the way that they come to be.
Elected on a June
Yeah.
or November ballot?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
and it's without a lot of, competition. But I mean,
You were going someplace.
he
with
needs,
this.
they need to be pressured.
Yeah,
They need to
I
understand.
don't think, so I don't think anyone has ever gone to Randy, who's our, Camden's representative to the Knox County Budget Committee, particularly from the Select Board of the town, and said to him, this is really important to us that, Camden supports this, and we feel it's really important that the county supports funding for this particular initiative. I don't think, that's
No, I don't.
ever happened.
I never understood the issue until
Right.
just that.
Oh, and I mean, generally speaking, it
No.
could be McEd, it could be, I don't know, could get involved in funding for county jails or so and have a strong opinion about that. But, we just never have done that. So
Yeah, we should
I
have
just
yeah.
think it would be really great if, aside from just a letter, because this is the letter that's going to go to the entire budget committee, if you could all sort of reach out to him and just express your support for this and to have somebody sort of explain
Why don't you send-
why we think it's
Why
important.
don't you send us his email address?
Yes, I'll be happy to do that.
All right.
Because
I mean, the thing
he's
is,
got a
we're
lot
already
of,
paying for it, because Camden really needs to be a part of this in order to have access
Right.
to a lot of grants and different things. So our membership, that's why we're paying dues every year. If the county takes it on, we don't have to pay dues individually anymore, and it'll be more of a shared resource that will then become more powerful.
Yeah.
It's actually costing Camden more if the county says
Yep.
no. So that's what I don't believe that's been understood.
oh, I think it's understood. I think the mentality is, well, if the larger communities want to do it, good for them. Why should we make places like Union and Appleton pay
Right.
anything towards it if they don't want the service? But I guess my
Oh, you
point,
think he's like sticking up for the little towns? You think that's why he?
no, he said that. I've got a notes of a conversation, one of the
Recent?
McEd, yeah, like 2 days ago.
Okay,
I'll send it to you.
I have a question. This letter's going to the Knox County Budget Committee.
Yes.
What's Randy's involvement here?
He's a budget committee member. He's Camden's representative to Knox County Budget
So we're
Committee.
not sending it to him, we're sending it to all.
So what I'm asking, in addition to approving this, somebody also reach out to him and say, this is really important for Camden, and we really would like you to support this.
Have you had a conversation with him about it?
I haven't, but another McEd board member has, and they were very concerned walking away from that meeting that he was not going to be supportive when it came time to vote.
Right. Honestly, we should all be a little bit more involved in county government, really. I mean, it's our job. We've neglected a little portion of things. We just ignore everything that goes on in the county, and every so often we're like, whoa, what's happening? And it's always too late, and they have their budget process starts earlier, so it's kind of off our radar. They also hold meetings on Halloween, which makes it hard. But we should actually be having Randy every year come and just give a presentation to the select board about, like, this is what's coming down the pipeline actually, this would be maybe as good a time as any.
I think you're right.
Because it's county budget time, so let's have him, he's actually been on there for
A long
time, and he's not, he's has a different philosophy about lots of things than I do, but he's.
How long is his term?
3-year terms, I believe?
Has he been repeatedly voted in?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's usually that nobody thinks of it until there's not a lot of
Can
competition.
we invite him to our next select board meeting?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
discuss this with him
When,
then?
And the other county issues that we should probably be aware of. I mean, this would be a time for us to weigh in and say, when you're representing Camden this year,
maybe even members of the public come in, they can't always get to a county meeting, but we should be paying attention a little bit more to the county.
Yeah, I mean,
Process.
a good example, through the Streetlight Project, ended up meeting with a lot of other Knox County town managers. And while we were in that meeting, all of us were saying, we really should meet and talk about EMS
Yeah.
on a countywide basis,
Yeah.
because everybody's experiencing, challenges with their service, and it's all the same thing. It's all staffing and, volunteers and that sort of thing. But there's an appetite for doing things regionally that the county could facilitate, but they're not going to do it unless a lot of their towns are saying, this is what we want to see you doing. So I think that,
Solid waste is another potential
absolutely,
area.
What
absolutely.
is the timing, just in terms of, when does this, what I'm trying to think of is when this person, Randy, was going to know most about what's coming to the table, to the budget committee? Is that a next
But they
quarter?
already have
They already have that?
they've got their budget, it's like the budget committee, they've got their binders.
Oh.
And
Oh.
I think they had their first meeting
Oh.
already,
So
and now.
they're in the process, so it is important. Now, my
Great.
point was
So
We
important.
were very lucky that, the county did set up a meeting about this
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
Midcoast RPC was folding. And so they had to figure, and they had a lot of towns that were concerned. So they set up a meeting to talk about regional planning and economic development. So we managed to kind of like squeak in a request for regional planning and economic development to be delivered by McEd in this county budget
So
cycle.
to bring him to the table, we're going to ask him to discuss the budget elements and its approach to the budget for the county, the whole 9 yards, or just this one item?
Let's see what no, I think just this one item is inappropriate. That's like
That's what I feel.
I wouldn't mind having a
bringing him into
general-
like a fight.
I think
I think they're two separate things, but it brings out the larger issue, which is a
agree.
disconnect between
Yeah, I totally agree.
town and.
That was my point. Well.
Let's see if we can settle this McKed thing before, talk about that on this.
Yeah, I agree. To that element, though, is this letter in its form, to me, it seems quite adequate to make the point, as I read it. I'm not an expert either, but do we want to move to approve this letter?
Yes, I'll make a motion, we approve the letter as written.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? It's 3-0 now, because Jenna's gone, so just call it 3-0. And note that Jenna Lookner had to leave because of illness. And with that.
Maybe
we
phrase it
can-
a little more gently than that. I don't know.
Well, all right. She left under the weather.
Yeah.
With that, we can.
Oh, no, we had to.
No, we tabled
moved
that to
off.
the 6th. Thanks, Bruce. Somebody to keep us honest. Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All's in favor? 3-0.
No
Thank you,
discussion about it?
Kendall. No discussion.